Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi sallam tasliman. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Dope Muslim Woman podcast family. This is your girl, the host of the Dope Muslim Woman, Sabria Mills. And we know that it takes a minute or two for it to roll over in social media. But the moment that you see and that you join this live, we want you to go ahead and give salams. We want you to notate the chat. We want to know that we're here. We always want to open up with the barakah of that. Again, this is Sabria Mills from the Dope Muslim Woman podcast. We are in season 8 of the Dope Muslim Woman on the Edge. We are at the end of this podcast season. I think on the Edge it's been a year. It's been a year. This is probably the longest season yet. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. As you join, hey to my YouTube people that are joining. We really appreciate you joining in on the conversation. And you help us by sharing it on your platforms. That really helps us a lot. Again, I am Sabria Mills. I am the host and the facilitator of dialogue here tonight. I will be facilitating this dialogue more in the listening space tonight, believe it or not. But I'm really excited about this conversation. It is called Fragile Bonds. Are you truly faithful? We will be talking literally about the fragility of fidelity. We'll be talking all things fidelity, betrayal, being faithful, not being faithful. And we're going to talk also about the nuances of that. I have an incredible expert guest here, which is Coach Nazir from Outstanding Relationships, and I will be introducing him in just a minute. In addition to that, I have amazing commentators from the community. So as you come in, please drop your salams. I want to see you guys. I want to see some familiar names drop in the chat here so that we can get this conversation going. I'm going to open up this conversation in the best way that I know how. I'm going to open it up with my own personal monologue. Whenever I come through these conversations and these topics, as you guys know, we navigated a difficult one, protection. I thought that was going to be easy, but it was not. And we had to tackle it in 2 episodes. And now we're talking about faithfulness and fidelity. And it's very interesting how I've noticed people got a little bit quiet once we brought this topic up. This tells me that this is an uncomfortable conversation to have. And obviously we're going to intersect it with different modalities of marriage, including polygyny, monogamy, etc. So let's think about this for a moment, because this is where we have our thought space. And again, these conversations are here to pivot us, okay, into dialogue and to do what our ancestors as Black people perhaps couldn't do. They couldn't sit around the table and talk about their ancestral wounds. They couldn't unpack what really betrayal or abandonment felt like in their generational line and how do you heal it. But we can, and we have the responsibility and charge of doing this now in honor of them. So first and foremost, welcome to the Dope Muslim Woman podcast. Today we delve into the complex and fragile nature of relationships, exploring the theme of faithfulness through this episode titled Fragile Bonds. Are you truly faithful? Infidelity, this word often conjures images of betrayal through physical acts of affairs. Yet we peel back the layers of this topic. We recognize that infidelity is more than just a physical transgression. It's about misused access, emotional betrayal, and the erosion of trust. Men often, they say, this is what the word is out in the street, that men often betray relationships by seeking physical or emotional intimacy outside of their commitments. This act isn't merely a lapse in judgment, it's a profound breach of integrity. It signifies a disconnection not just from their partner, but from the Most High, from their own values. In pursuing fleeting desires, they risk dismantling the very foundation of love and trust they've built. They also say that betrayal can manifest in different yet equally damaging ways. Women sometimes weaponize vulnerability, taking the insecurities and struggles of their male counterparts and exposing them to others, or using them as leverage in conflicts. This kind of emotional manipulation can leave scars that are just as deep as physical infidelity. Many women may believe that they are untouched by infidelity, as their experience don't fit the conventional narrative. But let's be clear, infidelity wears many faces. It's not merely defined by physical acts of cheating. It's about integrity, trust, and the emotional safety we create or destroy within our relationships. It's easy for us to point fingers. Believe me, I want to, and I wanted to, but I have been checked in this process of creating this content. I have to be checked. It's easy for us to point fingers and label infidelity as a male problem or to dismiss the emotional wounds inflicted by women at times. But at the end of the day, the behaviors may differ, the wounds are the same. We must ask ourselves, what does it mean to be faithful? Is it simply about avoiding physical betrayal? Or is it about nurturing the emotional landscape of our relationships? Can we redefine infidelity in a way that encompasses our traditional values and the subtle betrayals that we may not realize? As we navigate this conversation, I challenge all of us to look beyond the surface, that we cultivate integrity and foster trust. We must first confront our own selves. I've had to do that leading up to this podcast and this show because I get really charged around this topic, and really evaluate how we unintentionally harm those we love. And honestly, we create this content in honor of our ancestors, because I often think about my own generational line and maybe patterns that maybe exist, and why I may personally as a woman feel charged around infidelity, betrayal, or abandonment may have a lot to do with that ancestral pattern. But in honor of them and reflecting on the weight of their sacrifices, I am overwhelmed of what it took for them to really endure and really sacrifice a lot of things in order for us to have this conversation today. And so, bismillah, we're going to start, inshallah ta'ala. And I want to start by first introducing our amazing guests. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I am very honored. I have not yet, it's the first time ever on the Dope Muslim Woman podcast. So I'm really excited and maybe a little bit nervous, because I know, mashallah, there's some beautiful alignment and perspectives, but there may also be some difference of opinion, which we love that contrast that brings the dialogue. But I'm so honored. I've been following this brother and his family for a long time. He is an author. He is a coach and the co-founder of Outstanding Personal Relationships. And that's Outstanding Personal Relationships. They have a great website out there. Basically, they really focus, him and his wives focus on helping people thrive in polygyny, and thrive in a place where there's not often a lot of support. And as we know, it's a hard topic. I hate tackling that topic because people get really upset with me. But we have to sometimes. And my perspective is often a little bit polarizing. So he's authored so many amazing books. Let's Talk Polygyny Uncensored. We're going to talk about these books. Forbidden Conversation, Polygyny Vetting, Playbook. I mean, there's many. We're going to talk about them. But without further ado, I wanted to bring on our amazing guest, Coach Nazir, to the show. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Again, I appreciate the gracious introduction. Make me sound better than I am, but welcome is definitely a pleasure being here, and at your service, dear sister.
Alhamdulillah. We're so excited to have you here. All right, so we're just going to jump right into this conversation. So just to give the audience some context, we're going to talk a minute with Coach Nazir. Then we have some amazing commentators, as always, to layer this conversation, and we'll continue the dialogue with Coach Nazir. First of all, Coach Nazir, tell us a little bit from your perspective about what you do, just so that the audience really knows who you are and what you do, and then we'll jump right into this conversation.
Okay. First of all, I am someone who practices polygyny. I'm a polygynous man. So I was married 15 years in monogamy to my first wife and initial wife, Coach Fatima. And then I chose to practice polygyny. All right. I didn't have any guidance on it. Didn't know what I was doing. I knew the rules, but it took 5-6 years just to get to a satisfactory level when it comes to my leadership in polygyny. So, but now I've been involved in polygyny for 15 years. Wow. So 15 in monogamy, now 15 in polygyny. So yes, 30 years with Coach Fatima, now 15 years with Coach Nyla as well. So what we decided to do was really empower those who had these same situations, the same challenges. Polygyny is not anything new at all. And Islam literally regulated it, restricted it, and so on and so forth. But we had so many challenges and issues with trying to find resources and going back and forth, and people being scared and all kinds of stuff that we had to figure it out on our own and then reverse engineer it. So ultimately, we had the decision to make. Once it got to a satisfactory level, either we'd be quiet like most successful polygamous families do, which is absolutely understandable, or we decide to help others get more baraka, and that way empower others and generations to come. Initially, it was just for, initially started for our children and family and generations that will come. But we know that Allah Ta'ala says, He loves the one who's the most beneficial to others. So we decided to go ahead and kind of make it part of a mission to help empower others as we learn and grow in that process. We've been doing that now for about 7 years. So what I do, and I've been doing prior to that, is work with high performing men on leadership, building teams, on the entrepreneurial side and so on. But I'm an introverted individual. So even just being out on social media, really kind of had to break through on that in order to achieve the mission with at least empowering, educating others, especially about polygyny, since it does not get its fair airplay. And since it doesn't, it gets done wrong, things get swept under the rug, there's a lot of shame and guilt and all these things around it. But if Islam is giving us something as a solution, one, who am I to deny any of the blessings of my Lord? Second, who are we as Muslims to deny this, especially during this day and time where in human history, not only through technology with airplanes and internet and stuff like that, but this is the first and only time in human history where men are locked in to a situation and perspective, especially relationally, than right now. That's why one of the things I've been really sharing with many people is how monogamy in general.
Say that part again. I'm sorry, brother. Say that part again. You said something about locked in right now. I want to make sure I didn't miss
relationally. Yes. Let me give you an example.
Okay.
Over the last couple of 100 years, monogamy has become the norm. Before that, what was it? So even though we're talking about fidelity, what was it? Well, polygyny was normal. Not just polygyny. Here's the thing. When I ask the question, and I'm studying and I'm going deeper in it and learning about Islam, the question I ask people, because you can really kind of tell their level of education and literacy, is can a Muslim man have intimate relations, sexual intercourse, with a woman that he is not related to according to Islam?
Okay.
And you can imagine what the default answer is, like I thought it was. Like, no, you need to be married, right?
Okay.
That's what we all think, right? Now, according to Islam, that's actually not the case. Only in these last couple of 100 years has that been the case. Because specifically with polygyny, when Allah Ta'ala talks about it in Surah An-Nisa, he starts out, in many of the ulama, the scholars say that the asl is plural marriage. They start, Allah Ta'ala says marry 2, 3, or 4. That's the general rule, many ulama say. And then it says the exception, but if you fear you cannot do justice or be fair with them, then 1. Right? But that's not the end of the ayat. But I want to stop there for 2 reasons, because a lot of Muslims come with one is best if you but knew. That lets me know that you do not read the Quran. So if you are hearing this right now, it does not say 1 is best if you but knew, or 1 is best at all. That was purported by some Muslims who are famous and had people and communities and stuff like that, but that's not in here, first of all. Second, if it was only about sex, you have to look about the second part of this ayat. Because if you can't be fair, you can't do any of that, you can't practice polygyny and marry multiple women, then 1 or whom your right hand possesses. So we look at Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, whom we talk about all the time, in Shaykh al-Islam, or many different ulama, Ibn Hazm, rahimahullah as well. They never married. They studied, their whole life was dedicated to the deen and everything else, and even fighting in political situations. But that's not to say that they never had sex, because they did have concubines. They had milk yamin, right? Okay. Right? So Islam does allow that. Now, today, it's not necessarily applicable. Again, human history speaking, we don't have that outlet. And that outlet is generally for your physical intimacy, right? They do have rights and everything, but it's not that of a wife. So today it's called monogamy or nothing, as though that's been the norm. And we are trying to navigate these complex relationships, and we put it under as though, something is normal, where now we live in a certain time where fidelity is high, all kind of negative, immoral ways are out there to fulfill a man's lustful desires, as though that was the way that marriage was actually set up for. When Islam came to literally restrict it, I mean, they come to that, but it restricted it. Polygyny was, you can have as many wives you want to and all that kind of stuff prior to Islam, but Islam was like limited to 4 wives maximum. Now, there's no limit on the concubines, but the point is today's relationship style doesn't take any of our history, whether our ancestry and so on, human history across the board into
Mm.
account to where we are today as men and as women. We look at something as, oh, it's just lustful, and I just need to bring that out at the beginning, because if your audience didn't know that, like I didn't know that, I'm learning and growing, then it might be something to study and look even deeper into, because Allah Ta'ala has already even put things in place specifically for lustful things, even though, again, we don't have slavery per se, um, generally speaking, across the board, like we did at, 100, 200, years ago, similar to milk yamin and concubines. But that still is a part of the Sharia and a part of what Allah Ta'ala had allowed. So there must be some
Okay.
type of with it. So anyway, we'll get back
Okay.
to
So let's bring it in, Brother Nazir. You went all the way. I mean, when I say you jumped in, you went all the way in the deep end. I'm like, hold on a second, but we're gonna bring it, we're gonna reel it back in, and then inshallah we can kind of unpack this. Forgive me for a second.
indeed. Let's go.
Okay, bismillah. So, okay, I'm trying to catch my little breath. All what you said. Okay, all right. So you mentioned a couple of things. Whew, Allah. Okay, let's start. I always like to start with a baseline. You know what I mean? We need to start with a baseline with this conversation, and then we can build from it. So, based on your perspective, the work that you do, and being that you are a man that, is it fair to say you're pro polygyny? Is that fair or no? Is that all right?
You say I'm pro
Um,
polygyny?
yeah, that like a pro polygyny person or advocate for polygyny. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but is that okay for me to
That's
say?
fine. You could describe
Okay,
it like that. By the way,
okay,
I'm pro marriage. I let people look. I know I'm pro marriage and pro morals. So whether that's monogamy or
okay.
polygyny, that's the main thing is being pro moral.
I like that. Okay, we'll go with that. Okay, so then let's talk about a baseline around this conversation when it comes to fidelity, this word. I don't often hear us using this word. Actually, when I first I was going to actually title this podcast The Fragility of Fidelity, but I realized a lot of our people don't know what that means.
Right.
So I thought, wow, okay, so we're going to say fragile bonds, and we're going to say, are you truly faithful? People kind of had a better frame for that. So I wanted to kind of just start with a baseline based on your perspective. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, your experience, coaching people, all of that good stuff that you said. Your morality. I like that. Pro marriage, pro morality. How would you define fidelity?
But our divine fidelity is strength,
Okay.
as a bond. It's crucial to any type of success, in any endeavor, whether that's dealing with business. I mean, you go to the core of honor and integrity, other words that we don't necessarily use to hear in everyday life. It just seems like mottos, if you will. As an example, my sons and I, or my family, but my sons and I, we have something called HEALED. And we utilize HEALED as an acronym, spelled HILLD. It stands for honor, integrity, love, leadership, and discipline. All
Okay.
right, so we have this thing that we do on a daily. But honor and integrity, ask somebody what that means, very few. So similarly with fidelity, it goes back to things that we do understand, as you mentioned, faithful, but having this bond, being strong, being able to handle things. For example, there's a financial company called Fidelity, and that's
Mhm.
what they give off is strength, security, peace, in this bond.
Okay. All right. And so therefore infidelity would mean what?
The opposite,
Which
of
is
course.
I
You know,
wouldn't I like which is because I think it's vague. I think it's people have different definitions. So what would be the opposite of that?
yeah. Well, infidelity is unfaithful. Now, the general term, this is a breach. More, it's a breach of contract,
Mm-hmm.
if you will, because again, getting into relationships, we have a lot of unspoken expectations. So when it comes to fidelity, and I'm sure we'll dive into it tonight. There are different levels of what
Mm-hmm.
someone may or may not consider it. As I think you mentioned in the intros, like many consider it, okay, well now there's physical intimacy within these parts, then that's infidelity. Anything else or less than that, for some people to say no, it's not. Others say, well, emotionally, you're sliding a DM or having a connection with someone you never even met before. And some are even now in the AI age saying, oh, well, you had this AI girlfriend. How does that fit into it? You had this AI companion. It's real. It's sad, but it's real. So I say the opposite. Clearly going on things of betrayal, breaking, or breach of contract is probably the easiest way to understand that.
Okay. I appreciate that. So, I heard a lot of what you said, which was I don't think you realize, well, maybe you did. And you're okay if we have a real conversation, right? Like
Of
thoroughly.
course, it's
Okay. All right, brother. Don't take.
I'm not taking
no conversation. Don't. Okay. So I'm not sure if you realize how heavy it is what you said when you were kind of explaining this kind of position around plural relationships, with which most Muslims, regardless of how they feel about it, especially women, right? We understand the modalities of marriage. I think generally most people understand that these modalities exist: monogamy, polygyny. They both were practiced by the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and exercised by the companions, and they are both due its honor and its rights. Okay. But I think what I heard, I mean, and I was just trying to catch it, but you were throwing a lot in around the history and, concubines, right hand possessions, it was a lot going on. So I don't know if you realized how heavy that kind of conversation is. And not to say that we shouldn't talk about history, we shouldn't understand it, but it can be a very difficult thing to digest in that sort of manner. And I would say that this is my perspective. When we have a conversation, I would love to hear your input, because we're just going to talk about it a little bit. I would say, like, for all the messengers and all the, prophets and things, when Islam or this sort of way, the way of truth came to them, it always considered the complexities of the demographic or the culture in which it came. And I think sometimes when these conversations are had in our community, and for a second, I'm going to talk about the African American community with the transatlantic slave trade experience for just a second. I think sometimes I don't know if we always have it in the context of understanding that experience, or why, or even at least understanding why that may be difficult to unpack it in that sort of way. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, in a way of, like, I don't know if y'all know, but it started, Quran said 2. It didn't say 1. Prophet, they may not have got married, but they had concubines. I mean, do you understand that it can't? I mean, I'm just speaking now, bro, as your sister.
No, honestly, listen, I agree 100%. Okay. And this is why I say that our religious leaders have failed us.
Okay.
We're adults.
Tell me.
I converted to Islam. I wasn't raised a Muslim. My wife and I was raised Christian school, know the Bible thoroughly. That's what led me to Islam, similar to Coach Fatima. Christian school, we met in our Christian high school, and I got her, and I learned how to type from the school, the Christian high school. Everything else is trash. And then Coach Nazir also ended up converting later. So we came from Kufr to Islam. So you would think that our religious leaders in our communities will be speaking about the practicalities of it and educating it. So if we are having a hard time with it as adults, then whose fault is it? Whose responsibility is it? If we're not teaching it to our children, now mind you, as I'm speaking to you, right? I'm not speaking to you just as a brother, right? I'm a brother, no doubt. You're my sister, no question. However, but I'm also speaking as a father. I have 10 biological children with my wives. Mm-hmm. We have 4 daughters first, followed by 6 sons, and also raised 2 bonus children with Coach Nazir. So out of that means I have 5 daughters I'm responsible for as a wali or wakil, as a guardian.
Yeah.
Now, 2 of them are already married in monogamy. That's what they wanted. 3 of them, I'm working to get married. I mean, these baby girls in their 20s and stuff like that, and it's not easy. So when you talk about the challenge, 100%, I agree. Now, though, these 3 daughters, though, in particular, they want their husbands to practice polygyny.
Okay.
You have to ask, are they crazy? No, they grew up in a polygynous household. They saw me, this how I operated, saw what we did. But they want their husbands to eventually practice polygyny or be qualified to do it, and then they come in as an additional wife. So that, I'm also speaking to you as a father of daughters. And I'm absolutely aware of the challenge that women face, but more importantly, of men that's looking for other qualified men and leaders to marry my daughters. Women have it much harder than men when it comes to this. So I absolutely can understand, at least from the perspective of it's a painful topic to approach, but then who's going to do it? Hence, somebody got to get in there and at least do it and be real with these different dynamics, because ignoring them is just going to lead to more delusion and more breakups and more challenges and more Disney princess syndrome relationships that don't operate reality.
So do you mind? I mean, if you don't want to answer, just say pass. Sabrina, ask me the next one. Yeah, but I know you guys openly speak about it on your platform. But when you decide,
this book is uncensored. Let's talk polygamy uncensored.
Okay, tell you guys
Feel free.
openly, and I heard from your wives. I've heard their perspective on different videos and things like that. But you said you were married in monogamy for 15 years, and
Mhm.
you decided to practice polygyny. But if I'm not mistaken, you didn't. You did that not
Without
without
Coach
your first
Fatima
wife
knowing
knowing,
I'm
right?
married. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I
Okay. So,
listen.
could you just really quickly, because we are talking about fidelity, right? So to
Yeah,
me, I would think that's not, and please, like I said, I'm trying to have a real conversation, but I also don't want to be offensive. So if I
you're
am,
not
check
being
me.
offensive, sister. No,
Okay. Because
you
you
need
guys
to have a
talk about it.
conversation. Be
You guys
real.
talk about it. Okay, so
Yeah.
to me, that don't seem like fidelity to me. Like you went and you decided you want to be in polygyny, which no problem, but then
Mm-hmm.
you did it kind of secretly. So I was just trying
Mm-hmm.
to understand. Can you help me understand? And
No, listen. Hey, I got you. You don't have to tiptoe. It's all good.
okay, all
Yeah.
right.
Listen.
Bismillah.
Now, I was in polygyny. I was in monogamy, married monogamy, right?
Uh,
Studying some things about polygyny, knowing some people that were married in polygyny and stuff like that. And I had these assumptions. Like when I came to Islam, like, oh, nobody practices polygyny. I mean, that's, we calling it polygamy. We don't even call it polygyny the proper term because all I knew at the time was polygamy, which simply means a spouse married to multiple spouses. And by the way, I will use the term interchangeably because most people call it polygamy, and the vast majority of it in history has been polygyny. Polygamy means spouse married to multiple spouses, polygyny, a husband married to multiple wives.
okay.
Now, me, I don't advocate how I initially did it. That's not best practices. That causes a problem. Now, the challenge comes with how you think. As a Muslim, you're supposed to, submit wholeheartedly to Islam. So the question is, what does Islam say? Because I can't put my feelings over Islam. Now, me and my limited knowledge, I knew a couple of things. One, I know you don't have to ask permission. All right. And there's simple rules when it comes to a nikah. There must be witnesses and so on and so forth. So it's just an event that has to be witnessed. There has to be a procedure, the marriage and all that kind of stuff. Right. So I chose to go ahead and just do it because I felt in my weakness, as in weak leadership at home, that I'm going to deal with blowback anyway. I know she's not going to like it. I know she's not going to like it. She knows what polygyny is, Coach Fatima, and everything. And she's talked to other people about it and so on. She knows what Islam says about it. But prior to, I got the book by Bilal Phillips, that little blue book, Islam and Polygamy, with him and Jamila, I forget, Jamila Jones, I think, who wrote this little thin book. Oh, man, that was like, ooh, she was hot when I bought that in the house. So I'm like, okay, this is not necessarily the best topic to approach. But, and I also had it in one of my journals and writing goals and growing my business, because outside the home, I was a leader, doing well, growing businesses, building teams, investing, all this type of stuff outside the home, right? But I did not bring that inside the home where it should have been. Oh, so I chose to just follow the law so far as the letter of the law without really the spirit of the law and not understanding the repercussions. I felt I was going to deal with it later. Just going to be blowback. She's a Muslim. She's going to accept. She already knows these types of things. But in her mind, and rightfully so, I had already demonstrated leadership, assertiveness, confidence, courage, all of these different characteristics. But with this situation, I didn't. So therefore, this breach of trust, these feelings of betrayal, and all of these things happen, even though Islamically it's permissible. Okay? But is that best practices today? No, it's not. No, I had to deal with the fire. Like I mentioned initially, it took me 6 years to really rebuild enough of the trust by adjusting my leadership. That was the main failure point, was my leadership.
Okay.
So once I became the man capable of adjusting my leadership, then things became a whole lot better, to where now, for example, for me, it's 2:35 in the morning. All right. I'm in Africa right now, right? I'm traveling with my family, and I'm here, and right across this wall on this other side, I'm in this penthouse here. On the other side is this other penthouse. We neighbors. Like literally, we just had a vision board thing last night, my wives, my children, all that kind of stuff. But it took a process to get there. So I'm in my 15th chapter, but my first and second and third and fourth chapters was hell. You know what I'm saying? Because of how I operated. So, and why? I go to the religious leaders. They're like, well, no, you could do this. You don't have to do this and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't really feel right. However, if I'm going to make this move and I'm qualified to make this move, I'm going to do this and deal with it later. Wrong, bad move. That wasn't the best way to do it. Okay. And I encourage brothers, get to where you need to be up first, build yourself, then deal with it so that you don't lose the respect, the honor, and things like that matter more than love for men. Respect is more important than love. We spell love RESPCT. So being
Mm.
different with that, I violated that when I chose to go ahead and practice polygyny and then come back and let her know. And I didn't know the repercussions. So I had to walk through that fire and learn it and deal with it and rebuild and all that types of stuff in that thing. So, yeah, I don't, you could fire it
No,
off. Does that
I,
feel like infidelity and stuff? Do people say, oh, that's cheating? Da, da, da? Well, again, we can go on our own definitions how we feel about it. Or
right.
as Muslims, but not even just Muslims, practicing Muslims. All right,
Okay.
there's a difference. As a practicing Muslim, you can say, "Oh, Muslims don't do this." Muslims do everything. All right, we're not gonna be naive and act as though
Right.
Muslims don't. But a practicing Muslim, those who are pro morals, operate in a better fashion and take more care with it. So that's what I advocate, and I let people learn from my lessons of
Mm.
messing up and doing different things to do it this way. Yep, you can if you look at the spirit of the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law is to take more care and everything with it. Because Prophet let us know how women are, where they created from, the crooked, the most crooked part of the rib of man, of Adam, right? And if you try to straighten it, it'll break. They are more emotional creatures and illogical creatures than men. And I didn't take that part into consideration. I looked at, okay, the logical part, the rational part, and like Charlie Murphy said, wrong. Wasn't,
Hmm.
wasn't the best way to
So,
operate.
well, first of all, brother, I really appreciate what you said. Like I said, I've heard this story, and I really appreciate your honesty, transparency, and even just the reflection. I think this is a really good pivot into what we're talking about. It kind of makes this conversation around fidelity, fragile bonds, a lot more real and real time, where people really actually navigate day to day. Because I think where the slippery slope is, and I'm sure you've probably heard some of my content. Yeah, I mean, people don't agree. I get it. Brothers don't like what I say. I understand. Where the slippery slope lies, and as someone who coaches a lot of women, I've also navigated polygyny myself. I will just say that where the slippery slope lies, not in like, there's one thing to say, okay, technically, like you said, letter of the law, spirit of the law, right? Technically, you can, you don't have to get permission. I heard you say that, and I'm not saying I agree or disagree with that, but I'm saying I heard you say that. But where the slippery slope in real time, what people are actually, what a lot of women are navigating or have been navigating, um, and I say this cautiously. Let me give a little disclaimer. There are a lot of people doing it right and well. Again, we don't hear those stories amplified. So we do want to say that there are a lot of people who do it right. They don't do it this way, but we are talking about an issue here. Is they'll take that and they will justify cheating like behaviors. Okay. You're not even marrying the person. You out here with sister so and so, sister so and so, and sister so and so, and then you get caught. And you say, "Oh, wait a minute, I was thinking about doing polygyny." I mean, a lot of people navigating that.
Right.
Okay, so because it's like, "Oh, I don't have to," or "I could do it this way," "I could do it that way," and it puts, sometimes it challenges some of our sisters to be in such a state where they feel like they don't even have a right to their own pain, their God-given pain around the actual real feeling of betrayal and abandonment and deception, right? To lie to someone, to deceive someone, to I that part is really hard to reconcile, brother. And when sometimes it's just said, well, technically you don't have to do it, people just take that and they run. They don't really pay attention to what you said about the spirit of the law, which is also the application of it. How do you apply this technical aspect that you hear here? And also, we are talking about fiqh, and that's always subject to. There's always some difference of opinions here and there, but we're not going to get into that because that's not what this topic is about. But do you understand how some people get really challenged? And I could just say, as a woman, I don't. Polygyny is not really necessarily the problem, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. I think most women can really deal with it. It's not really as big as a deal as sometimes the defensiveness even around it. It's like a lot of people can wrap their head around it. But I think the impact that happens when you feel like you feel deceived, or you feel like you're not mutually respected in that decision. Do you see how sometimes that aspect of, well, fidelity and uprightness, and I know that what you say to me is true, can be challenged? Am I making sense in sort of what I'm offering back? Because this is what I hear a lot. And I just, you're a coach. You do this, and you do it with your
As a
amazing
Muslim,
wife. So
as,
I'm
as
sure
a
you.
as a
Yeah.
Muslim, as a practicing Muslim, there are a couple of different things.
Okay.
One is, um, it doesn't matter what what people in general think. So when we talk about the spirit of the law, it's not talking about necessarily the application of the law. Spirit of the law, for example, when I mentioned hadith dealing with a crooked rib, somebody said that means illogical. It doesn't. It means that they are fragile. Okay.
Okay. I think they
And that
thought
you
you
have to be
said that.
careful
You
with.
said that we were illogical. I
All
think
right.
they thought.
No,
So
no, yeah.
please
Generally
clarify
speaking,
that.
men are more logical than women. That's not what the hadith is talking about. That is more of a fragile. If you try to straighten it, you break it. That is dealing with being more fragile, if you will, right? Kind of the fragile bonds. Nevertheless, no, I can understand those feelings. Now, what I say with Islam supersedes that. As an example, someone said, um, you know, when it comes to lying, right? Is lying permissible in Islam? Then you would know, just like I know, in three situations, it is. Where do we get this from? Authentic hadith for Prophet. Now, are we going to go into that and go into the Shara'i meaning and all that? No. Are there books that deal with that in polygyny specifically? Yeah. Do they even say that you can do that? Yes. Do I advocate that? No, not at all. Because you're dealing with another human being. Period. This
Hmm.
person has emotions, has feelings, all of these things. But one of the challenges comes to here. One is unspoken expectations. Now, one of the things that men ask, and there's this term of being vulnerable and vulnerability and all this type of stuff.
Yeah.
Many husbands talk about, you know what? I was, my wife wanted me to be more vulnerable with her, this and that. He had some issue going on at work and ended up losing the job. He ended up waiting. He ended up telling her, I lost some job, and this and that. He's hurt and everything else, and he had crying in the situation, all this type of stuff. He let it all out, which first of all is a big mistake because I don't encourage that. I don't encourage you just simply come with this full 100% vulnerability. First of all, the word in of itself already puts you in a weaker position that there's a vulnerability or something that's there. That's not how we're built. Women are not the imams of the family. Their shoulders aren't built for certain things. It's the man's responsibility to handle things in a larger man and accept all of it. It all comes up to him. Decisions, her bad decisions, children's decisions, his bad, all of that responsibility comes under him really as a shepherd. So being 100% fully transparent is what a person thinks they have a right to of another person. A husband doesn't have it over his wife, nor does she have it over him. There's a matter of authority and responsibility, but you may have a secret or secrets in your own life that you're going to go to the grave with, that your husband doesn't have a right to know or to do anything like that. Similarly, that on the other side. All right. So knowing that is important, but women also have the ability and the right to express things in the nikah contract. Again, our religious leaders let us know that. Like my daughters let me know, my two daughters married in monogamy. They was like, I want to have the polygynous, what you call it, polygynous exception in my contract. Now they can't say that your husband cannot. She can't say that you cannot practice polygyny because that goes against something that Allah Ta'ala allowed. But she can say, I want to know prior to or have a discussion before and so on and so forth when it comes to polygyny, period. Because that then gives her an out of the contract where she would have more control of the contract. But are we being taught that and told that and so on? So I put it in there for them, but also let men know that you shouldn't put that in your contract, especially if you have no history of marriage. For example, I told you I have 6 sons, right? If you're going into a marriage and you're saying, oh yeah, I'm not going to practice polygyny, you don't know who you're going to be 10, 15, 20 years from now. So you're already coming into it at a lower hand. And who are you to deny any of the blessings that Allah Ta'ala has allowed, right? So that's what I let men know, but I also did that for my daughters. They wanted to know, and I let their prospective husbands know, the suitors who we were agreeing for marriage, that it's not ideal, but I'm representing my daughter. I'm not representing you. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
So just getting that understanding that communication really matters. If you think,
Okay.
okay, if I lose my job and I need to come home right to you, no, I need to get out there and find another one or find another source of income or something coming as a man because I have a responsibility before Allah Ta'ala. I will be 100% vulnerable to Allah Ta'ala. I'm going to take my tears and my challenges that are big and not add extra stress onto my wife's life and take it to my sajada, my prayer rug. You know what I'm saying? And move as a man with strength and assertiveness and confidence, these same characteristics that attracted her and are generally attractive of all women and respected by other men, and get some things done and accomplished to fulfill my role as a protector and a provider. So
Right.
there are, you have to make the delineation of what makes sense is not going to break her and hurt her or also lose respect for you. Because we look for patterns more than we look for words. Women are like,
Right.
oh my God, it's so sexy if he does it. If you want to come home and you vacuum and do some dishes every once in a while, something like that, that's cute, it's helpful and all that kind of stuff. It could be nice to get turned later on. But if that's not what you're doing on a consistent basis, and she ends up feeling a certain way, not knowing why she's turned off by that, because now you've taken on a different characteristic. You listen to what she said instead of what she really actually described in the pattern that she has given you. Helping and doing things like that, or housework, so far as those types of things to take and give her some time and everything and send her to the spa. Great, that's excellent. I encourage that. But I don't encourage you to work all day and take care of all of this, and then you come home and now you got the dishes, now you had this and that, and then you wait and you okay, baby, it's time for you to show out. Where it becomes transactional, it doesn't really work in that fashion. So anyway, I'm sorry.
Okay. No. I appreciate your perspective. Of course, the comments are going in. So brother, this is where I'm gonna merge the conversation respectfully. As a woman who's also kind of studied under traditional context, one thing I understand about law is that there are a variety of positions, right? There's some things that are very clear cut in the Quran and backed by the Sunnah. And then even within the Sunnah, the Isnad and things like that, and Hadith, all of those things matter. There are some things where there are different positions in regards to some things that you said. And again, I'm not challenging anything that you said. I'm just mentioning that. So I want to merge the conversation a little bit away from what Islam says this, right? Because when it's fiqh, there are a variety of opinions, and I understand when people say, okay, this is the position, this is it, it's just this one way. But Allah and His Messenger knows best, because sometimes what happens with Islamic law is scholars are really extracting from Quran and Sunnah to really interpret it into law, and that's why you have a lot of difference of opinion and different positions, etc. So, and that's what makes it sometimes confusing. That's why people hold this position and that position. And like I said, Allah and His Messenger knows best. But what I wanted to bring the conversation back to, because I read your website and I thought it was really captivating. And I think I'm going to read it out loud. When you go on to outstandingpersonalrelationships.com, what jumps out to you on the website is polygamy breaks weak men. Polygamy does not create chaos; it exposes weak leadership. And so I wanted to just bring the conversation, not necessarily polygyny, because I want us to, we're not centered on that topic necessarily, but really this moral code that you talked about, morality and being upright and being a leader, right? And so to me, I'm thinking I work in leadership, I've had to work in leadership, and I know those sort of attributes and qualities that would make me a good general leader, like let's say at work, is being honest and being integral, and sometimes doing the right thing, even if it's really uncomfortable. Maybe the bylaws say you can do X, Y, and Z, but I know that it may hurt my team. So obviously I'm going to lean more to that, what will allow me to really have a sustainable leadership, as well as make sure that everyone is thriving, right? Like that's what I want us to talk more about, those principles, because I think sometimes they get lost when I hear what I'm very challenged with is with conversation with Muslim men, where they say, well, Islam says you could do X, Y, and Z, but then let's be moral. But I'm like, but the two are contradicting each other. So, because if we're saying it's okay to lie, because it says we can lie, and we understand that there's validity in what you said, but I just want us to think about it morally. Like if you are CEO of a company or whatever, and you say, well, it's okay to lie in this context, but it may create this type of chaos and damage. As you mentioned, polygyny itself does not create chaos. It exposes the weakness in the person's leadership. Mm-hmm. I guess my question to you is about this moral code. When it comes to people having principles and values of integrity, where it's not just about you, it is about the people under your care, the people you're responsible for, doing the right thing. Can we talk a little bit about what is included in those principles? Even just since this is your website, help me understand that slogan. What are these principles? What are these qualities of leadership? And then what makes it weak? When we talk about it as far as in that perspective?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Mm-hmm. I actually have a framework called FRAME. have it for men and for women. If you scroll down even more on the website, you should see the illustration there, frame for men. What I mentioned at the beginning was my leadership was weak. And my understanding was because I just had a basic, okay, well, here's the spectrum. This is this level here. You can do it here.
So I don't want to cut you off. Coach Nazir, I'm just adding a caveat. Why won't you say it's wrong? You said, because you mentioned that what you did was weak, but why wouldn't you say it's wrong?
If the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did something, in authentic hadith, mentioned the Quran and the Sunnah, then I cannot say it's wrong. The Prophet never took permission from any of his wives, ever.
So permission is different from deception, though, right?
He also married without their knowledge as well, right? But I'll give you an example of something that we would see as a challenge today. We would see it as like, oh my God. Juwariya, radiallahu anha. She was a princess. She was 23 years old. Husband went out and fought. He got killed. Her entire tribe was captured, right? And Aisha, radiallahu anha, let us know in this hadith later that her marriage to the Prophet ﷺ was the best marriage, period, for what it did to her people. What happened? Juwariya wanted to come and go ahead and make some type of deal with the Prophet ﷺ. Again, she was raised as a princess. She was raised in wealth and all this type of stuff, had extreme beauty. She came to the Prophet ﷺ when he was at Aisha's house, radiallahu anha. She answered the door. She said, when I saw her, I hated her because she talking about her jealousy. She saw her beauty. She knew that Juwariya, radiallahu anha, was the type of the Prophet ﷺ. He knew that she was gorgeous, or she knew that she was gorgeous and everything else. She came in, she pled her case about her father being leadered and being captured and everything else, and, you know, ransoming herself. The Prophet ﷺ said in front of his wife, Aisha, radiallahu anha, I'll make you even a better offer. I will marry you. Think about that. How will we take that today? If a woman comes up and she's an available woman, and now if a husband proposes to another woman in front of his wife, we would say that that just lacks all kind of tact, right? We would say that. We would absolutely say that. He said, you know what? He's having a conversation. You know, I'll marry you, blah, 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 blah. And his wife is right here in the kitchen, in her house, and all this type of stuff. We can't act like that we wouldn't feel some type of way.
I don't know if it was as that cold, because I've studied that hadith with scholars myself, but I don't know if it was as cold as that, though. I get what you're saying, but I don't think it was as, I don't think it was as
being cold. I'm just talking about the facts. Facts are, she went there, she overheard Prophet ﷺ say, I'll marry you. And he did. And he did that. And then, of course, all of the companions, though they didn't have to release her family, but no one wants to have as prisoners of war, which was part of the law at that time, their family. So everybody freed all of them. So their marriage freedom. And then Aisha radiallahu anha had mentioned that's the reason that she gave for this is the best marriage. But this is somebody, you know, when you talk about how you marry widows and we married this and that and so on and so forth, which is all true, right? Except, of course, Aisha was the only virgin. But Juwariya was married for 3 months and her husband was mainly out in battle. And she was 23 years old. So she was gorgeous. She already had wealth. She had all this type of stuff as well and beautiful. So these things matter. But my point is, I don't say something is wrong unless Islam says it's wrong, because I don't have that authority. And that's one of the challenges when it comes to Muslims today. We take our feelings and we put it over the deen and we come back. So, for example, you had mentioned ikhtilaf, right? Where there are difference of opinions on things. When I was speaking, the only difference of opinion of anything that I mentioned was that many ulama say that asl is 2, 3, or 4. Plural is the bound. Not all of them. So there's ikhtilaf on that. But when it comes to permissibility and these other things, I've never come across any ikhtilaf on it. So if there's something that you say there's different opinions on, it's better to put it out. But since this is not a fiqh class.
Yeah, it's not. And I don't want to, and it's a real slippery slope, brother. I definitely don't want to go down that road because I think it turns into.
But my point is,
I really want to talk about the principles.
I don't say it's wrong because wrong will mean it's haram, and there's 5 categories for every action. So that's why
I'm talking about when a person, and I don't want to get into what I mentioned when I say wrong. I don't mean permission. I meant if a person goes and is secretive and hides something, and then there's an element of rights that is supposed to be there as well, that comes with the level of transparency, because things begin to shift when the modality changes, when there's more than one. So I just thought that was my question for our secrecy, betrayal, those sort of concept where I saw the value system that I see for as good leadership. That's why I was asking, why wouldn't what does not speak of that be wrong instead of just I wouldn't recommend it? And I'm talking about like betrayal, secrecy, hiding things, like those type of. And I'm not saying you did this, brother. Please don't take it personal. I'm general. Let's talk about it generally. generally?
No, I don't. Again, you're not gonna hurt my feelings. As we can
No,
have a
I'm
friend.
not. But I don't know the situation, so
Yeah,
it's just a question.
I was not forthcoming. I told you, I married without her
Yeah.
knowing, and then not till
No.
months later did I even, eventually disclose it. So
Yeah.
again, and so when I'm saying that that's not best practices, I don't encourage that at all, because that does not take into account the the feelings of betrayal, the feelings of deception, all these other things that go along with human emotions. All right, though it's allowed, meaning when I look at it and I can see this is on this spectrum, but that's the lowest level. All right,
Okay.
now keep in mind when we're talking about like polygyny or extra, um, other than monogamy, for example, ethical monogamy and polygyny, then there are different forms. In Islam, in Sunni Islam, you have misyar, for example, where a wife may say, all right, the time I will give up some of my time, or the financial responsibilities, because they are the measurables, and then there are the intangibles. The measurables, time and money, those are easy to calculate, those are easy to see, and it's the man's responsibility to be fair and equitable with this. And then the intangibles, the love and the sex and these different types of things that you can't see, those you're not held accountable for. But the time and the money, you are. All right, you're not gonna be able to regulate your emotions and everything when it comes to if you have a favorite. Everybody know the Prophet Prophet's favorite was Aisha radiallahu anha, which means it's not wrong to just have a favorite, but it is wrong to go ahead and put it on display and treat one bad and so on and so forth, right?
Okay.
So there's a spectrum of things. Now, when it comes to leadership, and I'm glad you made that call, because that's what I was outside the house. Leadership is on point. I'm studying 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. You have to be a leader within you. I'm leading teams, all kinds of stuff outside the house. But inside the house, I was like, my wife, Coach Fat, she was like, well, what do you want? What do you expect? Like, okay, we're here. What now? What's next?
Okay.
So she's giving me the right as a husband, the right as his leader. What do you really want? I failed initially because I was like, well, Islam only requires that, you be cordial as a Muslim to somebody else. You don't have to be friends. You don't have to be this or that. I wasn't telling her my vision, what I wanted for the future, what I wanted to build toward. I just was like, here's the lowest level. This is kind of just it right here. So, we could kind of figure it out. That's not what she was looking for. She was looking for strength. She was looking for that assertiveness. She was looking for that confidence. She was looking for that husband that she knew she already had for 15 years and the way he operated outside the house. So my failure in leadership at that moment was being too soft, because the challenge we have as men, and one of the reasons many men are private about it or secretive about it, polygyny, when they're doing it right, not when they're just immoral and tricking off, is we have this thing. We live in a society right now that we never lived in before, where they say monogamy is the only way. It's monogamy or no way. So generally speaking, that emasculates the man. And it emasculates him by doesn't have to strive to even be more, especially because polygyny is for exceptional men. So if I were to look at it and say, okay, let's look at a celebrity, throw out, let's say Stephen Curry, right? He got enough money to handle a whole bunch of women. All right, lots of money to handle, and a lot of women to be open to it, whether it's the Nick Cannon stuff or the Elon Musk stuff or whatever, right? They have these abilities for the tangible parts, the time or the money or what have you, but society's like, nah, you locked in over here. Hence, we have a lot of men really just suffering, a lot of exceptional men that can handle these things and build, suffering in silence. They choose our mediocrity. So I let men know, even if it's not your intention to practice polygyny, you should strive to do so for what it will make of you as a man. Now, when I talked about frame, I didn't get into what the acronym meant.
Coach Nazir, you I'm sorry, excuse me, brother. You are very mashallah tabarakallah. May Allah bless you. But you are, the things you say, brother, I see why you be because when you came on, I'm gonna keep it 100 with you. And I put you on the flyer, you know what happened. What you think happened with my platform? Them sisters was like, you want to talk to that brother? I'm like, brother, oh my goodness. Okay.
Oh yeah, we've been uninvited to numerous picnics and iftars.
listen. No, that shouldn't be the case. We should always be able to have a conversation. So, Coach Nazir, I'm gonna pause you. I think this is a powerful conversation. I almost wish that it was we could just have this dialogue. But we can't. We're a little bit over time with our commentators. So I do want to bring our commentators in. If you could be a little bit patient with me. I'm not cutting off anything you need to say. I just want you to hold it. I want to get some commentators in the conversation, and I'm going to bring you back in to finish this dialogue. But brother Nazir, you don't play with your comments. I'm gonna just say I don't know. I don't agree completely, but you already know that. We already know that. And but it's still you're my brother. I love your wives, by the way. I think they're beautiful and intelligent and smart. And I love listening to them. So may Allah bless your family, all of you guys. Truly, and I truly mean that. But I appreciate you. Can I put you backstage for a minute, brother?
No worries. Go ahead, sis.
You didn't send shockwaves down my shoulder. May Allah bless you. Okay, brother. All right, Bismillah. Okay, mashallah. That's why we love the Dope Muslim Women podcast. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. We're going to bring Coach Nazir back. We really appreciate his perspective. We love polarizing perspectives, and we hope that, before I bring the commentators on, I want to say this. We hope that we have the capacity, because we've been talking about capacity lately. Like, I'm going to be very honest. Some of the things that brother said, maybe even personally, it's like, ooh, right? But do I have the capacity to be able to stay with my brother and him stay with me? I think that's really important for our community. And I think if we could build that skill and that muscle, we'll do a lot more with moving the needle, because we were never told that we have to agree, but we do have to honor and respect each other's rights. Alhamdulillah. And I love a lot of what the brother shared. May Allah bless him. All right, so let's go. I'm gonna bring in the sister first. Khadijah, you ready? You can just shake your head yes or no, girl. I can see you backstage. You ready to come on first? All right, Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are
Thank
you,
you for
Khadijah?
having me. Alhamdulillah, I feel favored. Um, I make it a practice to stay in gratitude as much as possible.
Well, I'm so happy that you made it here.
Mm.
We've been wanting to have you on
Yes.
for a little while. So just so that the
Mhm.
audience knows you, and you, thank you for being a commentator. Tell us where you're from. Maybe even something
Originally
small
from
about yourself.
originally from Oakland, California. I live in Flint, Michigan, and I am an early childhood educator and an artist. And yeah, that's what I do. I teach little children. Um, and I advocate for their health, wellness, and well-being.
Okay, Bismillah. All right, sis. So the first question I have, and obviously this is a nuanced conversation. That's why I love these topics, because I'm like, I'm gonna talk. I have all of these notes, and I'm like, I'm gonna talk about fidelity. I'm gonna talk about trust, and I'm gonna talk. And you, mashallah, Allah is kind, because one thing for sure is when you make intentions, Allah is going to drive it where it needs to go. So real quick feedback of what you've heard so far. What's your thoughts and feelings?
It's a lot. Um,
Mhm.
a lot of I don't want to say triggering, but I'm looking at the comments on both Facebook and YouTube, and I heard a lot of things that I didn't necessarily agree with, a lot of things that I never heard before, but I do understand the brother's perspective. Um, I am adamantly opposed to the idea that a man should, like, why get married if you don't want to tell your wife what you're doing? Like, I don't think a man has to have permission. Permission and um counsel, or not even counsel, just courtesy, respect. I think it's just a matter of respect. Women want to be respected too. I don't want to be objectified.
It's
I'm a
about
whole human being with
about respect for
capacity to
you.
think. Yeah, it's some. I like it when people tell me the truth. That's a hard boundary for me. I'm a fan of a hard truth over a soft lie any day. Um, and I try
So
to.
let me ask you this. I don't want to cut you off, but I wanna get, and what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna ask you a question, and I'm gonna bring in Saliha as you're still on the screen. Saliha, you good with that? Because I'm gonna bring out. Okay, cool. Um, Let me ask you a question. You mentioned this respect word. How would you define fidelity?
Fidelity. I watched your last live stream, I think it was, and you hit the nail on the head when you said integrity. And for me, integrity is, like you said, doing the right thing when nobody is looking, but also standing on what is true and what is right, even when it's against yourself. And I think that we are very good at talking about what other people do wrong and what other people are wrong, but we not so good at calling our own BS,
Mm.
um, and recognizing our own toxic behaviors. And the ego is a powerful drug. Um, And sometimes it means being quiet, but sometimes it means speaking up and telling the truth. If you want to access humility, and faithfulness for me is humility and integrity. And I look at that as a not just as a character trait, but as a trust, as an amana.
Mm,
Allah is always watching. And no matter
absolutely.
what we do to justify these things, ways that we hurt other people, we're going to be ultimately held responsible for how we care for other people's hearts.
Powerful point. Beautiful. Okay, Khadija, hold that thought. Saliha, I'm going to bring you, merge you into the conversation. Then I'm going to bring you and Anissa, but I'm just bringing you guys in one by one, okay? I'll hear from the ladies first. All right, Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
Hi.
Hi, guys. I'm
Okay,
so
quickly.
excited to be here. I got the nerves. I'm jittery. I'm excited. I'm nervous. I'm like, this is juicy. This is controversial. This is gonna be good.
On the edge. Okay,
Yes.
so tell us first, introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, maybe something small about yourself.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Soliha Abdurrahim. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. I'm currently residing in Atlanta, and I am a mom, fashion designer, and all the things. And I absolutely love conversations like this. So, Sabria, thank you so much for inviting me on the call. I was a little hesitant, but I was like, I got really nervous, so a lot of times when I get nervous about certain topics that I feel very strongly about, especially if they're topics that are, difficult but needs to be had. And this is something that, I appreciate you for bringing me on. So it's
Well, I
good to
appreciate you for being here. And
be.
so, obviously, you heard our conversation leading up, and we heard Khadijah's comment here. I want to merge you into the conversation as it relates to us as women, because I want to talk to women
Okay.
for a second. Then I'm going to talk to my brothers, and then we're going to bring Coach Nazir back in. We're going to culminate it. But from your perspective as women, when it comes to fidelity and our ability to be trustworthy, or for us, our ability to be faithful, how do you think it should, what do you think that should look like for us as women? It's easy for us to be like, y'all men, y'all need to lie, excuse me, y'all need to respect us, tell the truth, etc. But what should it look like for us as women?
That's a really loaded question. So I'm going to start by first saying that it looks as women as first having trust in ourselves.
Mm.
It first starts with,
Uh-oh.
I'm
Did I?
sorry. Can you hear
Oh,
me
you're
still?
fine. Yep, you're back. Yep.
Can you
Uh-oh.
can you hear me still?
I can hear you now.
Okay. So trusting ourselves, betrayal in ourselves. A lot of time people want to talk about cheating, but I feel like cheating is something that we do to ourselves first. We cheat ourselves on our ability to, produce the thing that we should be doing. You know what I'm saying? Going after our own goals, going after our own desires. Why we betray ourselves by not holding up to our own standards, our own things that we set forth for ourselves. And let's even take it before that, right? Because before ourselves, there's God. And I have found within my journey that the less connected to I was with God, the more I ran into the arms of men who were going to hurt me, right? Who I thought were going to protect me. But my first father figure was God. And as much as spiritual, as much face veil I was on, and how much spiritual, household I was in, I did not have that connection. And that connection, I feel, to be honest, it is the main reason why I've went through a lot of the things that I've gone through, why I've attracted the men that I've attracted, right? Why I have succumbed to some of the things that I have turned a blind eye to as a woman that I know in my spirit I should not be, doing, right? And so I would say first, that's the first one. That's top number one. Because when you know God and when you serve God and when you serve Him, and if you know the Quran, if you know the Bible, and all religions, it says this. But I think a lot of women are trying to go find a husband when God says in the Quran, it says, uh, is a the is the best man is a man who findeth the wife,
Hmm.
right? So we out here trying to find something, but we should be finding God within ourselves. And if you trust God and God is by your side, you should know that He's gonna give you what you're praying for, right? Because if
Amen.
you close to God, you know that your prayers are going to be answered, right? So I tell women, write down what that man look like. Is he 6'4"? Get to the T. But I don't feel like he out here in the dating scene. I think that the dating thing is a little too much. I don't feel like women should be, dating multiple men and vice versa, because I feel like one thing that I've learned is that certain behaviors that you have in your singlehood comes with you in marriedhood. Just because you think that just now that you're married, no, those qualities that comes with marriedhood and that wife, that loyalty, that faithfulness still need to be in singlehood, right? It
Mm.
still needs to be practiced. So I think that a lot of time we think that automatically, oh my God, he's my husband and this is my wife and we're death do us part. But you missing the patterns, baby. All them time. And if you didn't take the time to get to know this person, it's about to come full circle. Right? So all
So
the things that you miss. Okay, I'm sorry, I might be
sorry,
rambling
Solia.
on,
No, no,
but
no.
go
You're
ahead.
saying a really important point, but there was a point you said I want to bring back to the surface when you mentioned these behaviors, and I think that's what I was
Yeah.
asking Coach Nazir, and I hope he culminates that. Which is, I asked about these values, right? These
Yes.
values or these principles that makes a person faithful, honorable. They have fidelity, etc. These behaviors are often patterns, and
Yes.
one of the things I have found that if somebody was out here, you out here doing a lot of stuff pre-Islam or before you come to, truthfulness or uprightness, a lot of times that behavior can carry on. And what I found is
Yes.
that we'll
Yes.
pick out of Islam and say, hey, I could do this, I could do that. But it's like, okay, what are those fundamental behaviors and principles and values? But I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you a quick question before I bring up on Anissa, because I think obviously did you hear Coach Nazir and some of the things he was speaking from the male perspective, which we honor and respect. Um, as women who often feel betrayed by men who speak like Coach Nazir, or have that perspective, I should say, um, what would you have to say about that? What is your thought about that? As far as the women who may feel, oh wow, like that's harmful or hurtful or triggering.
Are you asking me or
I'm
what do
asking
you
you,
think?
Saliha.
Okay, well, I'm going to be very honest. I caught the very end of his
Okay.
talk. And when I first started hearing what he had said, I was like raising a little eyebrow. And then he kind of explained it a little bit. So I agreed and disagreed with the portion of what he was saying, but I can't give full
Yeah,
background.
yeah,
I
yeah.
wouldn't be fair dialogue
Do
context, but
you
just
think
for
we're
the,
out of balance though with this conversation as women? Do you think we go too far? Like we're holding men to this standard that's just unreasonable when it comes to faithfulness, like you mentioned, monogamy as women.
no.
Okay.
Um, okay, so we want to delve into that. I would say just from his stance and the comment that he made when we were talking about, the different wives of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But I think that we don't talk enough about the quality of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself as a man. For one, I feel like back then a lot of the women understood polygamy. So, even the context of not telling your wife in America in the 20th century, it just for me, it would raise a red flag as to why wouldn't you come out and say that? That is something for me. I feel like if a man is polygamous or if he's monogamous, be upfront about that. Like come out and say that openly to whoever you're speaking with, right? And I feel like not enough men do that. And I think a lot of men hide their way into marriage, you know what I'm saying, on those pretenses. And I think it turns out bad because then the women are like, they feel betrayed. Like, you said that you were only going to be with me versus maybe going towards women who are open to the polygamy route. Right. There's a lot of women who are in that space. So why not gravitate toward women who are on the same mindset as you versus trying to, I don't know, I want to call it manipulate them into what you want them to be because you think that, they're pretty or whatever, or this is Islam. So I think there should be more compassion in that, and understanding that, and as a woman, I feel like, I don't know, that's just a layered conversation. But I will say that even though the context or the books may say, um, you can't tell your wives. I feel like, but what's the end verdict for you? Do you want to have a happy home at the end of the day? Do you want to have a cohesive polygamous situation? Because if that is the case, if that's your end goal, then you would see that it wouldn't hurt you to have compassion, right? It would not, it would make sense to you to have respect. But then fundamentally, it would make me question, well, what man doesn't have respect for women? Then it would make me question his childhood, his views on women, you know what I'm saying, previously, if he had any therapy. Because I feel like good men, and I've, alhamdulillah, I've been able to experience good men, but they value women. They value women's opinion. They would never dare to want to, go behind her back and take another woman because he values the family. He values her voice. He values how she feels, those kind of things. So, and I think that a lot of, yeah. So I'm gonna
No, no,
stop
no.
right there.
I appreciate this perspective and layering it. Thank you so much, Saliha. I'm gonna bring on Alnisa. You ready? Just shake your head, yes or no. I'm bringing Bayam by surprise, baby. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, sisters. How's everybody?
Hey.
We're great. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, y'all clocking that tea.
Okay, all right, sis. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from, and maybe just something small about yourself.
All right. Well, I'm Alnisa, as you said. I am originally from Pennsylvania, and I am a transplant to Texas right now. Registered nurse by trade and lover at heart.
Alhamdulillah. Okay. All right. And so alhamdulillah. So I can't wait to hear what the brothers are going to intersect with this. But okay, so you were listening. First, just any
Sorry. I know. I'm falling apart. Here we go. Can you see me
fine.
still? Okay.
Any thoughts or feelings about what you've heard so far? First question.
Whew, there's a lot of thoughts and feelings. Well, I first must say, for me, fidelity is consistency between what you promise and how you act. It's more than just having the
right.
Yeah,
what you say and what you do. Yeah.
Right. It's a consistency between what you promise. Usually a fidelity is a promise, is a contract, is a covenant that you have, right? Mm-hmm. And then you need to follow that up with the actions. If you're inconsistent with that, it breaks down, it causes damage, it causes hurt and pain. But so following that up with consistent actions, builds trust, builds love, builds connection, builds hope. As far as what I've seen, I have never been in polygyny per se myself, but I have been entertained, or brothers have sought me out that were married. So I was on the, what do you call it, the receiving end, or getting ready to get into polygyny or whatever. But the number one reason why I think that I probably didn't go through with it is because I seen how little respect that they had for even their own wives, transparency of what they were doing. A lot of the wives didn't even know or weren't accepting of having an extra wife, or felt some type of way about it, had hurt feelings towards that. And I felt like if a brother was going to step into something like that, I didn't really agree with Coach Nazir as far as, I understand that, they don't need the permission. It's, technically they don't have to have the permission. But if you want the smoothness in your home, if you want the love, if you want the balance in your home, then that's a conversation that needs to be had first and foremost. That's something that you bring into the table prior to marriage. When he said don't write it into contract, I'm jumping all over the place because there's so many things to unpack. But when he said not to write it into the contract, I kind of understood that too. I do. Hold on, sisters. Now, hold on, because you don't want to box yourself in. The brothers, you don't know who you're going to be later. You're not going to know if you want to have this later. If you're going to be able, if you want another wife, what the dynamics of your household, how it will change. What if later your wife can't have children? This, that, and the third, and you don't wrote in the contract, I'm not going to take another wife. So there's so many different factors in there that I do believe that that's something that I don't think should be in the contract explicitly if that's something that he really isn't sure about, or hasn't been, isn't sure about, period. But with that being said, I still think it's a conversation to be had when that feeling first arrives in him. He knows when that feeling, when that desire approaches, when that woman that caught his eye, because men and women, it's a whole nother story for this too. They love different. They romanticize relationships differently. Okay. Men are more like the pursuers, and and women are more like cautious and safety and looking for red flags and assessing it different than men. Men are going after their whims a lot of the times. However, when that notion arrives that he wants to take on a second wife, that's the time to have that conversation with your wife. That's the time to bring her to the table. That's the time to let her know. Now, how often does he let her know? Does he every single time that he finds somebody that he might be interested in? There's gray areas right there. But there should be that conversation like, hey, this is something that I'm entertaining. This is the thoughts that I'm having right now. Because with fidelity, especially men that were in monogamy that are now pursuing polygyny, there was an emotional exclusivity there. between that husband and wife. She had that emotional exclusivity, that access with him that hasn't been being tapped in by another woman. And then you go secretly start engaging with other women. And now these women are tapping into her source that was exclusively hers. That's painful. That's a very painful process. So when I'm about to lose my area, I think. But so when when I did engage these brothers, now some of them, a couple of them, yeah, I did want to marry. Like, yeah, great guy. I thought he was awesome. You know, he had his head on, has Islam on, this, that, and the third. But what took me out, well, like I said, was you really didn't have this conversation with your household ain't right. So if your household ain't right first, you can't be right with me. You're not going to have that, what I need for me, if you can't have that conversation at home first. Sorry if I got long-winded.
No. I really, really appreciate that. SubhanAllah. So there's something that was brought in, and I'm going to bring the brother's been waiting so patiently. I really appreciate you guys. Was there always a wali or wakil involved in the whole process? Are we ready to accept the consequences of sin knowingly and unknowingly? And I don't know what Sister Vivid means, but I think when I'm going to bridge what she just said about, I think it's a powerful point that I was trying to make. I think it has to be less about the conversation, whether you should do monogamy, whether you should do polygamy. That's already been settled in our deed.
Right.
The matter is like, how are we operating far as when it comes to integral, and what does it mean to have fidelity? What does it mean to be upright, faithful, and integral? And I do want to emphasize, just so I don't make sure, Coach Nazir did emphasize that he did not agree, like he does not recommend it. And
Right.
So I do want to just kind of connect that back. But the question is like, when these things fall outside of bounds, right? And it's like, the issue is like, when you have integrity and you do the right thing, you keep things in bounds. So the reason why, maybe transparency and honesty and all those things are kind of necessary as far as a value system is because it keeps you in bounds. We have these secret conversations and you going off here and there and all of that. Are you in bounds truly? We say like, oh, Islamically you can, but it's like, but can you? As a married person, can you go over here and do that? I'm just saying. So I think that we have to really like frame this conversation. And like I said, if you have values, you have values. If you really are integral, you're integral all the time, baby. If you're honest, you're honest. Like you said, doing matching what you say and do. So I appreciate your perspective. Khadija, I saw you kind of move. Did you want to add something with that real quick?
Yes. I think that if we kind of keep in mind that Islam ultimately came to correct conditions, right? Like the Islam itself is correcting conditions, bad behaviors or whatever. Like polygyny was made lawful because there were things happening that needed correction. And just because we are allowed to do something doesn't mean we have to do something. I think a lot of times because we're allowed to do it, we make it a right. And there's a lot of things that are lawful that can become harmful after a while. And yeah.
Okay. Good point. Good point. I love that. Okay, ladies, because of just in the interest of time, I'm going to take you backstage. I'm sure you have so much more to say. I'm going to be able to bring you all back on. So don't leave. I'm going to be able to bring you all back on at the end, inshallah. But I do want to hear from my brothers. Thank you all so very much. Okay, bismillah. I'm going to take Khadijah's already off. I'm going to take off. It's a process, child. This is work. Oh, wrong person. Okay. Bismillah. All right. So my brother's backstage were so patient. Brother Ilyas, all you got to do is give me a thumbs up or that you're ready to come on stage. All right, brother. Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. How you doing, sister?
I'm well, alhamdulillah. How are you?
I'm fine. How the people out there?
I think everybody's okay, as best as they can be. Tell us where you're from, and maybe something small about you so the audience can get to know who you are a little bit.
From New York, born, raised in Queens, born Philadelphia.
I said, oh, okay, from where I'm from. Okay.
No doubt. Work in the hospital industry, environmental service supervisor, operations manager. Father of one, college graduate. That's about it.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Nice. I'm so grateful for your patience. Thank you for waiting so patiently, brother. The first thing I'm going to ask, just because this is such a layered conversation, and I could tell we're going to need a part 2 in this as well. But
Mhm.
I think we're peeling back the layers of the onion. Any thoughts just from what you've heard thus far? That
Well, from what I've heard, especially from the good brother, Assalamu alaikum to him, um, he spoke about the error of his ways, which was going about it by, I won't say the error, but the um the misstep, by going by just the law of the word, which means you can do as you need to do within that
mm,
situation, as opposed to thinking about his woman's feelings that are definitely going to come with that. You know, Islam is totally separate from somebody's emotions.
mm,
The religious aspect, definitely understand. He has the right to do it, as he stated. Everyone has the right to do as they please. But
oh,
the strife is going to come with that. The
okay,
sister has the right to do as she please. If she doesn't like it, she has the right to ask for a divorce, right?
okay.
It-
I'm just listening. I'm listening.
yeah, so she
Okay.
has the right to ask for a divorce. If she does not like it, so it needs to be addressed first. Everything, it boils down to proper communication, not just what you feel and think. You have to know what your partner feels and thinks.
Mm, okay.
You have to, yeah, go out
Well,
there, know what.
how would you define fidelity or faithfulness? Like, what do you think it is?
Trust and communication.
Okay, but what is this trust thing? We throw it around, but I don't know what it
Well,
means at
trust.
this point.
Well, when it comes to relationships, I've noticed the lack of trust between each other is because when you're coming together, you don't really treat each other like family. You
Okay.
treat each other like, okay, she's my woman, I'm her man. That's her family. This is my family. Now we're coming together. You don't think about this woman as your real woman a lot of times because divorce rates are so high. So that proves that people are only thinking of the exit strategy a lot of times.
Mm,
So they don't
mm,
think about this woman or this man as my family. Nobody
mm,
divorces their family that much.
right.
If you think of this person as this is my family and we're together, that changes your whole aspect of thinking that, well, if this doesn't work out, I'm
But
gonna
is that
leave.
trust? Is that trust though? To necessarily look at somebody as your family? I mean, when you say it's trust and communication, which
Hmm.
these are good values that you mentioned,
Hmm.
but to be faithful or to have, like I said, fidelity as a
Okay.
concept, as a man. Let me just make it real for you. Let me just make it real. Whatever you don't want to answer, say I'm not answering that. But that's how we do on here.
Nah, I'm
What does
open.
it mean for you to be faithful? What does that mean? What does that look like? Or what has it
But
looked like? Or
for me to be faithful to a woman, which means that means I can be open and honest about everything. Anything you cannot tell your woman, you have violated a certain level. If you got to say to yourself as a man, I don't think I could tell her that because you've already known you violated something. You can't lie to yourself.
so let me ask a question because I saw this quote. I posted it on my page because I
Mhm.
wanted to be fair in this conversation, and we haven't really brought it up yet. But a lot of men reported that they feel betrayed by women because
Mhm.
their vulnerability is exploited. So you know how you just said, okay, if I can't tell my woman whoop de whoop de whoop, I've already crossed the line. But a lot of men say, well, we don't feel safe enough because I can't trust her with my vulnerability.
Well, vulnerability, that's feelings. That's like if you're talking about
Okay.
traumas, things in the past and
Okay.
things of that nature. That vulnerability, like, oh, this happened to me, and then in a fight she brings up, well, that's why your uncle did this, or that's why your auntie did that. That's the type of vulnerability that a man won't put out. And be
Okay.
like, okay, let me just see how she is. Until after a while that you get comfortable and you know this woman will not turn on you in such a manner. And that normally takes a lot of time with her and be like, okay, you put out a little tidbit, a little bit, and see how she responds to that. And then from there you can grow.
So
Yeah,
y'all,
yeah.
y'all. So you
Hmm?
saying women? Are you saying women aren't easy to trust in that regard when
Um,
it comes to
well,
that vulnerability?
well, we trust you to do what you're gonna do.
What does that mean?
That means that over time we've seen certain behaviors, just like you've seen certain behaviors from men.
Fair.
So when you see certain behaviors, you're not gonna turn your back on it. You're gonna look and watch, and you're like, okay, let's see where this is gonna go. Step one, step two. Once you get to step three, you're like, okay, I see where this is. That's
Oh,
with men and women.
okay. Got
Yeah,
you. I really appreciate you. I'm gonna pause you right here. I still stay. I'm gonna
got you.
see if brother and I hope I'm saying it the right way, brother Michael. Ready? Okay, bismillah. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Can I? Oh, I think you're on mute, brother.
Alaikum salam.
How are you, brother?
Good. Just been sitting back here listening to the discussions that started off with Coach Nazir, and I have a few thoughts of my own because I came here, like I said,
Before you say your thoughts, can you just tell us where you're from, though, just so we have some context?
yes, I'm born in Philadelphia, North
Oh,
Philly, but
got Billy here. Okay.
travel around for the most part. I've landed in Pittsburgh, and I feel like it's a home for me.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, brother, go ahead. Share your thoughts. We're listening.
Yes, I just was listening to what was being stated um, from Coach Nazir, and also your input of what was being said, and it just had me remembering what my mom was talking to me about before I came on here on this platform. Raised by my mother, seeing the whole being raised with her, and just experiencing her ups and downs and relationships, and what her preferences would be now as a almost 50-year-old woman. For most women, like you said, it's not the polygyny. It's not the polygamy thing issue. Polygamy is not an issue, and I didn't think that it was going to be. I didn't think that this conversation was going to be about that. I mean, like it could have been about anything, family, friends, but it had to be about relationships. So where it's touchy is that it's not really about. I don't think women have an issue with polygyny. I think they have an issue. Well, I'm saying it wrong. Not polygyny, polygamy, because polygyny is supposed to be not permissible. So
Polygamy is. Are you talking about are you talking about polygamy where a woman can have multiple husbands and a man can?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
but go ahead. Make your point. You said so. A woman doesn't have an issue necessarily with polygyny, but she has an issue with
the trust, the bond, basically, with that individual. I'm not, women want to find love, and solid love, love that's based on concrete, emotions, not just abstract. Where I love you, I can say I love you. I can say I love, another woman. How I
okay.
love my, how I love, how I love, how that love shows up, for my wife, is definitely different. How it shows up for my mother. So we can see that there's differences when people want to, throw the dynamic of polygyny into relationships. And my mom, she doesn't. She. I think at a certain point it scares. It strays women away from trying to hear anything about that. Trying to hear anything about polygyny. Trying to hear anything about how that is taking place, because it's taking place, but it's not recognized. It's taking it's like polygyny is taking place, and all its mechanism is being hidden within the society that we live in.
So let me ask you a question, and I appreciate your perspective. Let me ask you a question though, in general, because we're never gonna the conversation on plural. I just want to frame this because I want to really careful and I want to be really respectful because everybody knows my position where I say anything that the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came with, I align with. The Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam practiced monogamy with Khadija radiallahu anha, and he practiced multiple marriages, plural marriages with the mothers of the believers. And I would honor that modality. So we're not here to, debate or discuss the two. It came up, obviously, that is Coach Nazir's specialty. So it was a good frame to talk about fidelity under. But I do want to just say that it's less about that and more about what does it really mean to be in a relationship, or it doesn't have to be an intimate relationship, with another person and have fidelity. Like, you guys came on this show, you guys showed up at the right time. That in itself is a component of fidelity. That's keeping your word. So I guess my question to you, just as a brother, is, for what does it mean to be faithful?
To me, it means, it means not having that, not having those thoughts of what you don't know won't hurt you.
Okay. Brother Elias, are you eating? Are you eating dinner? I'm sorry, Brother Michael. Are you eating? Okay.
No.
Anything happened on the Dope Muslim Woman? Okay, I was just checking because it was a distraction. Okay, go ahead, Brother Michael. Finish your point.
And I didn't come here to talk about anybody's beliefs or whatnot. I'm a Muslim, so I believe in worshiping one God. So anything outside of that, anything. So when we get into topics about lifestyle, I feel like lifestyle is heavily. There's something about the unseen world that takes its it takes its course in the seen world and makes men and women do weird things. Now, one of those I would feel like I was referencing to my mother, trying to find love. Okay, women want to find a companion, want to be in a matrimony with an individual, not not just because faithfulness is some rule that some rule that society created, but it's divinely it's divinely given to those who walk righteously.
I hear you. I appreciate you so much, Brother Michael. I'm going to hold you right there. Thank you so much for your perspective. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, just in the interest of time, because we have so many perspectives, and I want to get Coach Nazir. I know everybody been talking, ripping up what he done said, but I'm like, let me bring my brother back. I'm going to bring Coach Nazir back on the screen. I'm also going to try to fit all my ladies on here as best as I can. Okay, but let's bring Coach Nazir back. Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum, Coach Nazir. Okay, bismillah. Anything you want to add before we bring all of our people back here on screen?
Yeah, actually,
sure. Go ahead.
And I want everybody to consider this question.
Okay.
How important is marriage to society on a scale of 1 to 10? How important is marriage to society on a scale of 1 to 10? I think the way that you answer this question can help shape honesty and perspective. Because if we said anything at an 8 or above, when we started, I shared with you that I'm pro morals. So whether that's monogamy, polygyny, that's fine. But we discuss polygyny a lot because it does not get its proper airplay, and we're woefully uneducated by it. And that's clearly seen how people practice it, and it destroys communities and people's lives. So, but if marriage is an 8 or above, then clearly Islam talks about how it's half of your deen. Islam also talks about how Shaitan's number one most loved evil deed is that of breaking up a family. So going back to that answer will be the question is, if we have an issue with the polygyny thing. Now you mentioned women, you had mentioned something I want to get clarity from you as well. You said that you think most women can deal with it, that polygyny is not the issue. So I want to ask you what you meant. But I also want to ask before that, for people to think of, all right, if we have this issue with polygyny, which again is just it's an ancient system. It's an ancient form of marriage that handles a lot of modern day problems. But if we have an issue with it, and Shaitan's number one goal is to break up a family, how is this not preventing families from coming together if you consider marriage being high on the list? Now, if you consider marriage a 2 or 3, I get it. Then you have an issue with any type of marriage. Whatever, do as you wish. However, if you hold it in high esteem, polygyny is just simply a different form of marriage that comes with rights, roles, and responsibilities. Now, polygyny is not a right. Matter of fact, marriage is not a right, period. It's something that's permissible, that's encouraged, but it's not a right. You don't have a right to do anything. So there's responsibility. But I did want to get clarity on what you meant when you said most women can't deal with it when it comes
Sure.
to
I don't mind defining it, but I do want to make sure or explaining what I meant. But I do want to make sure that we are not making, because this conversation we're not making this conversation a battle between polygyny, monogamy, etc. Because I think that Coach Nazir, that conversation will go around for a million years, right? Like we'll go in circles forever. And I hope no one is on here speaking against any modality of marriage. But what I meant was what I have found is that a lot of women don't necessarily have an issue with being in a modality of honor, respect, rights being taken care of, that whether it's with one husband or plural. Now, the concept of it, I agree, it's difficult. But when rights are in place or things like, it's not, and what I meant by it is that when you're in it, it's not as difficult as it seems when you're not. That's really what I meant. When you're in it, it's like, it's certain things you think about all the time when you're out of it. When you're in it, it doesn't, like, you don't have, like, it's not the actual modality of quote unquote sharing or whatever the case, however people frame it. It's actually not as difficult as people or as women may perceive it to be. That's what I have found. Okay. But what is difficult is where there are the betrayals or the mistrust or the activation of the nervous system, or where women are on the edge and I don't know what's happening and there's not clarity, there's not communication, there's not like that is when there's a lot more issues. But I'm saying when you're actually in it, it's actually not as much as a problem. You know what I mean? It's not, you really will find just as a woman, you really have capacity and bandwidth for it. That's what I meant. But if it's done right. But the issue is more so on that fidelity component. So let's bring this conversation back. I'm going to bring the ladies on, and I really want us to culminate this conversation around fidelity, trust, and betrayal, because we talked about a lot of things. And again, this is like, I always say these conversations, fidelity, protection. I think we did one on like emotional availability. These are like huge onions. We peel layer by layer. People get frustrated at the end of the podcast. People are going to be frustrated. I already know, because they're going to say, you didn't answer the question. So we're going to frame it, but this is like an onion, guys. We want you guys to go back and have your own conversations with your own families and your own communities and figure this stuff out. And one thing I really appreciate from what Coach Nazir said is that a lot of people do not study their deen for themselves. And there has been a failure of leadership. There is a lot of misinformation out there. People are not even going about the means to really educate themselves. And maybe this is an invitation to do so before you have such charged opinions. At least make sure it's backed by something valid. So I appreciate you, Coach Nazir, for that advice. I'm gonna bring the ladies back on and then we'll finalize this conversation. Bismillah. Hopefully y'all can fit. I think we all can fit. Okay, bismillah. Okay, so first and foremost, thank you all for being a part of this very layered conversation. Coach Nazir, I wanted to give you an opportunity to, I know you just made a point there, but I also wanted to just give you an opportunity to speak to the ladies, or even just offer some perspective, or just kind of final words. I know you heard what the sisters said and some of their concerns. Did you have any words, pieces of advice, or just commentary about that?
Listen, everybody has their thing. We're all individuals. We're all humans. So we have our desires, we have our preferences, we have our dislikes. We have our stuff. Yeah. But as practicing Muslims on the Adult Muslim Women podcast, then of course we must put our own thing to the side, put Islam first. So let me give you an example of something that I had thought about when I first read it and I became Muslim. And I was confused, but it made a lot more sense to me later after I learned the situation. Allah Ta'ala says in Surah Tahrim, the very first ayat of the book, the very first ayat of the Surah 66, verse 1, in English translation, it says, O Prophet, why do you prohibit yourself from what Allah has made lawful to you?
Mm.
Seeking to please your wives. And Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. Prophet ﷺ was human. Okay? And when you dig into the tafsir of this, there are two different tafsir. One says is talking about the honey in between his wives, and the other that's more authentic and earlier says that this is the time where the Prophet ﷺ was with his Maria, the mother of his son, the only child he had that was born after he became a prophet, Ibrahim, rahimahullah. So, and he was, for perspective, if you haven't studied, I definitely suggest you study and dig into the tafsir here, because this will give you such wisdom. The Prophet ﷺ was doing something that was lawful. He was with Maria in one of his wives' houses. She saw him. The Prophet ﷺ felt embarrassed. He said, "Do not tell Aisha." And she went right and told Aisha. And because he knows his wives and their personalities and so on and so forth. And it was a little challenging, you know what I'm saying? Didn't necessarily feel good in that type of thing situation. But Allah Ta'ala came in and corrected him in his loving way. But also, of course, didn't come in Hadith Qudsi. This didn't come in just from any Hadith. This is Mutawakid. This is right here, came in the Quran. But it specifically told him, you're prohibiting something from yourself that Allah has made lawful for you, seeking to please your wives. So understand, dear sisters, many times when you talk about consider our feelings. Okay, there's kind of a double meaning with this. One of the reasons, and I'm speaking for myself and even different clients that work with people, one of the reasons many men do this in private is because they've already had and worked to have conversations who are hoping you're approachable. Now, by the way, you can absolutely initiate the conversation with a prospective husband or your husband at any time. You don't need to wait for him to think he's going to come to you, because he may not, and that's not cool. You can initiate the conversation. But many times when you think that your feelings aren't considered, your feelings are considered, which is why he's doing stuff privately. All right. Is that right? No. Do we encourage that? No, it's not the best thing to do. But that's why, because he feels he's protected, provides you, but he has these internal emotions that we aren't taught how to process. Because the same person I protect and provide this soft life and all of this type of stuff, now I'm hurting her in her feelings. I don't know how to really process and deal with that. Now, not that hurt equals harm, but many times when you say that, oh, he didn't consider my feelings and da-da-da, what you're saying is that I feel this way, so you must then act in a certain way. That's where it tips from considering your feelings to being manipulating how I move. So many men choose silence. So I'm just putting you up on game right there so you understand that. Because you have feelings don't mean, and you could absolutely experience your feelings and they can be real to you like mine are real to me. That doesn't mean you don't have them. That don't mean they're not recognized. Not ruled by somebody else's feelings on something.
Brother.
Okay.
Nazir.
Just being real
Let
with
me
you.
tell you something.
I just have to say, you are absolutely right about not having to.
But when I tell you my platform, I tell you they're gonna come for me after this show. Ladies, y'all already know. I'm gonna go to Juma on Friday. Them sisters, I'm telling you, they're gonna pull me to the side and say, why you let that brother come on that show and say, woo, Brother Nazir, you stressing me out. Okay, ladies, go ahead. Somebody speak, please.
You are absolutely right. You don't have to coddle my feelings, nor I don't want you to. I
I
just want to
have
know
so much to say.
Hold on, Sally. I'll let Khadijah finish her point, if that's okay.
I just want to know what women mostly just want to know what's going on. Nobody should be held hostage by somebody else's emotions. Nobody should be held hostage by somebody else's desires. Nobody should be held hostage by somebody else's desires. I'm actually pro polygyny because I agree with Sister Sabria. If the Prophet said it, if the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did it, I agree with it. However, Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did it in a certain way. He was the walking representation of the perfection that humanity can be. I had great teachers, alhamdulillah. I was born in Islam. My mother had to fight her way through a lot of shenanigans because she was coming into Islam as a teenager, from a Christian family in the 1960s. She didn't have any local support. So her experience was a lot like what you mentioned earlier with you and your wives. Because of that, I had the benefit of growing and learning with her. You'd be surprised at some of the things that brothers tell sisters they need to do when they're embracing Islam. I had the benefit of a very strong mother who navigated marriages in Islam and before Islam. Um, we just have to be forthright and forthcoming. I'm not here to control anybody else's behavior or anybody else's desires, but I'm not going to allow people to use Islam to manipulate what I do and don't do. And I'm not saying that that's what you're doing, because what the I understand the perspective, and I also have studied in it, and I've been approached for polygyny. My reason for avoiding it is because they were not honest. Either they weren't honest with me or they weren't honest with their initial wives. And if you no man should let anybody emotions control his actions and behaviors. No person should do that. I teach little kids. I have to resist the manipulation of 3, 4, and 5 year olds every day, and I have to encourage parents to, because they cute, and we love them,
And
right?
I'm a
So
really, I don't
yeah,
want to cut you off. I don't want to cut you
no,
off, but I want to reel you in
that's
because it's getting really, and I don't know what time it is for Coach Nazir. I feel so bad. Just so you know, Coach Nazir is not in the United States. He
okay.
is done us a solid by coming this time of night, in the middle of the morning rather. And so I want to definitely get him off at a respectable time. But I think what I hear you say, and Sully, how you can chime in just a second. But I think what I hear you say, and again, Coach Nazir does not like, this is not his position. He recommends brothers not to do this, but I think you're speaking from a perspective point of view, right? Like you're saying, is that what I'm understanding, Coach Nazir, where you were kind of saying this is why this happens because of the protection of feelings, right? Is that, I want to make sure I'm not missing your point.
That's a part of it, yeah. Because if they didn't care, they'd just be like, "This is what I'm doing," you know. But they're
Okay,
not.
yeah. I
Well,
understand.
oh, go ahead, Sahela, because I
Go
want to
ahead,
say something.
Saliha.
Saliha, sorry.
Okay, you guys, hi everybody. Thank you so much for letting me hold the floor, and I appreciate everyone's for speaking and their opinion and perspective. I really do love this dialogue. So to point at Brother Nazir's, commentary and things that he's been notating, and I appreciate him for bringing up the Sunnah and Islam and and the Prophet and his wives and things like that as well. Well, one thing I wanted to notate is I do agree with him when he says, because I've had this experience myself, is that when he says that when men do lie to protect you, right? But as someone who, as Khadija said, I like my truths hard, you know what I'm saying, more than a soft lie, right? So I would prefer it if you would be honest about the feelings, right? To say, like, if we're in, I'm gonna say this, polygamy, a wife, a relationship, all of these are serious things. Like he said, they are 50 of your dean, which in my question would bring up, okay, if it's 50%, that means this is a heavy ass load, excuse my language, but this is a heavy load with a lot of responsibilities already on top of the 50%, right?
Uh-oh.
Have the wherewithal to even withstand that other 50%, as it's in my brain is a responsibility. Then I'm committing to a person, you know what I'm saying, for like 10, 15, 20 years. Why are we not taking the time to ask certain questions?
So
Can you
did we
guys hear
lose you,
me?
Saliha? Yeah. You're still
Can you
with
hear
us. You're
me?
just kind of cutting in and out. So I
Can you
think
guys
the
hear me?
point, yeah.
So, and I don't mean to get too far, but I would say that the basics that we're missing is communication. Like I want men to know that we have the capacity for the truth more than you guys may think. And I'm also pro polygamy as well. Even though I've seen it done negatively, I still think that there are benefits from it, but that we're not having that conversation, right? But I'm just saying, even in any type of relationship, monogamous, polygamous, shoot, even in the relationship with your children, there still should be communication, right? About tough things and giving the person the opportunity to be vulnerable with you in that space. You know what I'm saying? To be able to say, hey, I know you might feel that you're protecting me. Because a lot of times y'all think that, a lot of men say that, and the opposite becomes true. We actually feel betrayed. We actually feel hurt. We actually feel lied to. So we would much prefer you to say those hard things like, wow, I do feel this way, because it is if you're dealing with grown women and we're having grown men and grown women conversations, I feel like these conversations should start with that communication and just being honest about those feelings. That's what I would say. I think there's a lack of communication with tough, difficult feelings and emotions and that
Good point.
safety.
I
So
think
that's
so.
what I
You
would
have
say.
it's a good. I think you made a powerful point, because remember, all of these conversations we're having, we are talking about
Yeah.
capacity. We are talking about capacity, and a lot of these hard things, these things you're talking about, plural relationships. You're talking about even monogamy. A relationship in general
Yeah.
requires capacity and requires relational skills.
Yes.
So we don't often deal with the fact that sometimes those skills aren't necessarily
Yes.
there, and
Yes.
then we cover it with, "Oh no, Islam says it's like no,
Yes.
baby, you don't have the capacity." Because the
Yeah.
capacity would say that you're able to have difficult conversations, and it is a
Yes.
skill like we're having right now. This is real
Yeah.
tough, Coach Nazir. I
Yeah.
just said you getting me in trouble. You don't have me.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead,
had to
Coach
ask my
Nazir.
husband if I had to ask my, I'm like, it's okay if I had this conversation. So it's and I don't want us, I'm gonna be honest, you guys, this is the last thing I wanted to say, but a lot of these conversations are so ingrained that we have to have these conversations with our children. We have to communicate about the tough stuff. It's so taboo, but we grown now. I'm about to be 35 in a week. There's conversations that I'm having with my 8-year-old that I wouldn't dare, my mom would never have with me, right? But I'm learning that we have to have these conversations. And just as a man, and in the notion, I feel like men could just do better with just, hey, trust us, give us that capacity. Have some compassion if you do want to, add multiple women. And my other suggestion was this, and I'm gonna end it off of this. But if men are continuously going and trying to get relationships and trying to go with polygamy, I feel like if the end all is that the women ain't getting along, maybe the women should get along, and then we should come together and be like, hey, you know what? I like him over there. We all get along. We like him. Okay, then we go, but that, I think if the end goal is to work it out, to have a family union and really, have polygamy the way that we all think it should be, and not based upon what everybody else, have put in there. And like he said, knowing your dean. And also, there's no one cookie way to do it. So I just think we all should have an open perspective to each other, communicate, have difficult conversations, pray, and keep it going. That's my end on that.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
May I
So,
add a point, Sister
Coach
Sabria?
Nazir, go ahead. Go ahead, chime in, and we're really going to have to culminate. I know, Anissa, you're dying to say something, but Coach Nazir, Coach
Okay.
Nazir, did you have something really quickly? Because I did want to honor you and this space, and I'm gonna pop over to my sister.
Again, not really. I mean,
Okay.
just speaking truth. You know what I'm saying?
We appreciate
Communication.
you.
These things are universal across the board, no matter what it may be. Communicating.
I appreciate that.
Family. Just it's really about demonstrating love and respect where the other person can receive it. That's really kind of the challenge that we face, because women don't think like men, generally speaking, and vice versa.
We appreciate you. Go ahead, sis.
Assalamualaikum, Coach Nazir. How are you? Alhamdulillah, brothers as well. You mentioned a point about you do understand their feelings. You have considered their feelings. You were making the point about when you decided to go ahead or when brothers do decide to go ahead and pursue a polygynous marriage or any mode of marriage, whatever. Well, actually, polygyny. So you said you have considered their feelings. You didn't know how to handle those feelings. You didn't know how to deal with the person that you've married and vowed to love and protect, and now causing them pain. So my question is, why not step into that uncomfortability and find out what that consequence is by having that difficult conversation? Why don't brothers go the full length, and instead of saying, I don't want that uncomfortability, this makes me feel bad. I know she's already going to feel bad. I've already touched that topic. I know what her outcome is going to be, but I don't want to feel any more uncomfortable. So I'm going to go ahead and keep doing what I'm doing to make me uncomfortable, and we'll just have to figure her out later. That's not fair in my perspective. That's not something that's balanced. And so I wanted to understand that point more, instead of, okay, well, you already know this is how she's going to feel. You did have the conversation, even in your truth and standing in your manhood and standing in your strength and saying, okay, well, this is something I'm still going to pursue. We're going to have to navigate this, but I'm still coming to you, and we're still going to have this conversation. Irrespective, I understand what you're saying. I understand how you feel. I'm going to help you navigate through this because it's difficult for you. It's hard to process for you. I love you. I'm going to carry you through this, but I'm still going to go ahead and do this, as opposed to saying, nah, I'm gonna go do this, and we'll deal with your feelings in the aftermath. That's not cool. That's a problem right there. And I don't think that upholds fidelity. So can you help me to clarify that point right there? Why not go through with the challenges instead of halting, turning, doing your thing, and come back and fixing it later?
Okay. First of all, that's fair, 100%. To be fair, I wasn't even pursuing polygyny, but I was open to it. Okay. So that's first. Second, what I was doing and evaluating it and looking at it and reverse engineering it was practicing conflict avoidance. So my leadership failed at that time. That was not displaying any type of courage. That was cowardice. Okay. So when I talk with men today, I explain that because that's real. That's 100%. When I talk about frame, the F stands for fearless. You have to be able to have the fearless conversations, not that you are not having any fear, but you fear less. Okay. That's something that's respectable. R is for reliable. If she's dealt with me for 15 years and expecting me to be a certain way inside the home as I was outside the home, I violated that by not bringing that same leadership in the home and not knowing how to deal with it. Because I would simply just ask you, how many men do you know that have this emotional training and wherewithal to understand and bring the conversations and deal with the backlash and all that kind of stuff? Where they at? Where they teaching the brothers at? The masjid? They having a holocaust like that every week?
Oh, wow.
No. The A stands for ambition, because you have to be able to have your money right and be moving in the proper direction. So many of the discussion talks about people who aren't doing it right, the predators, because you're here to bring out predators everywhere. You know what I'm saying? And I don't respect the people that allow predators to be at their Thanksgiving table when you know things have happened because you haven't been able to have the strong conversation to handle some things with that individual. Similarly, whether that's in marriage or dealing with children or anything else, that's extremely important. Then M is for your masculinity. Many men are emasculated these days. Now many men now are speaking about things online. Now they become sassy. Now it's becoming this, oh, you're saying, but they're literally expressing themselves, but then they also get shunned to get talked about, but they say they want vulnerability and transparency. But when a man says it, generally there's all this pushback, or if a woman agrees with a position, now she's a pick-me, for example. Then the E stands for being exceptional. Polygyny is for exceptional men. It's the exception to the rule. This ain't for everybody. You know what I'm saying? Right. And most men don't want polygyny because it requires responsibility. So the fact of the way that I did it, and you mentioned, you're 100% right. Like Coach Fatima, who you talking about, had an absolute right and expectation of how I should have behaved. I was doing conflict avoidance, but I was also given this example. Somebody posted hadith in here. It's authentic hadith where Prophet ﷺ says that if a person avoids arguing, Allah Ta'ala will build a palace in paradise for him, even if he's right. Okay, even if he's right. So what I was doing was saying, okay, well, I'm not going to argue with her with this or that, or I'm not going to deal with this now. I'm going to deal with it later whenever the fallout comes, because Islamically, blah, blah, blah. And was like, okay, well, I'm just going to avoid this. But as a man constantly avoiding to have the difficult, challenging conversations, then now you are demonstrating a lack of courage, confidence, assertiveness, all of these things which are attractive to women, and losing the respect that you so desire as a man, as a husband, from your wife. And if that does happen, it's going to be hell building it back, because it could take a long time to build it and take just a second to really lose that trust. So what I was doing, was it the right thing? No, it wasn't. I got to admit it. I got to be transparent about it. Do I like talking about it? No. Coach Fatima don't even like me really talking about it. You know what I'm saying?
Just to clarify, I wasn't really directly to you, and I appreciate your openness and your transparency. I was saying in a collective, because this is the approach that yours is an example of the rule for how it's being practiced and why it's so frowned upon right now, and why we have such a sour taste in our mouth now. Not that I don't think a lot of us women dislike the modality of marriage or polygyny, period. It's just how it's being practiced and the way that you're coming forth saying it with such truthfulness of your mistakes that you made. Men aren't owning that. They're not owning that space, and they're perpetrating the predatorial behaviors that leave darkness in our heart for it.
Which goes back to one of the things I mentioned in the chat is that wakils and walis are there for a reason. But women overstep those bounds and don't use the protections that are put in play, generally by finding or wakil shopping or something like that. Like I adopt the same opinion as one of my fellow friend of mine. Was like, look, if somebody converts to Islam, they shouldn't be getting married, a sister especially, for at least 2 years. Brothers come out the woodworks, they extra thirsty and they predator, all kinds of crazy stuff that happens. But where is it that you can be educated about relationships on an emotional level without chopping off your cojones as a man. All right, without being emasculated, being told the same talk therapy that women traditionally more social go through, where men emote internally. All right, so we have the same amount of emotion. We just emote, we express it differently.
Right.
So who's teaching our sons that?
So with that I think that's a really powerful point. I hear the conversation back and forth. And again, we hope that you guys have these conversations in your families and in your communities, and it's productive. And even if it's difficult, but I think what I hear you saying, Coach Nazir, is kind of what we're saying, which is it sounds like there's not a lot of capacity, but yet and still there's a lot of talk about I think why there was a mention of that is because I think you mentioned that why brothers tend to do this, right? They tend to not tell the wife because they're ultimately protecting her feelings, but that's not really true. The real truth is that there's not really a capacity necessarily to do what they're embarking on, at least at that given time. And again, that can shift and evolve, as you gave a beautiful example around, but potentially perhaps we're not having enough conversations, as you mentioned, as it relates to the ingredients, which may Allah bless you for the work that you do, the ingredients that is necessary to embark on these things before we have the sort of all men need to, it's not natural monogamy, before it's like that's really the kind of strong position, maybe perhaps those ingredients and that capacity to be able to lead families and have multiple relationships and to be able to be ahead of and have women under your care, women and children under your care. Because it's not just women. Because I grew up in Philly. I don't know, my Philly brothers are here. I was Muslim. So I got so many friends who grew up in poly, right? I mean, obviously most of my friends. And they're just as, they have just as many feelings and hurt and things like that, regarding the topic. So we're not just talking about women's feelings. We're also talking about children and anyone who's under the care of that man. So I do think that I think at the end of the day, I think fidelity, capacity, I'm kind of hearing some frames here. Coach Nazir, if it's okay with you, with your permission, I want to pop up. Brother Ilyas, are you finished with your dinner, brother? Brother Ilyas. I just wanted to, maybe not. All right. Brother Ilyas, are you coming back? Okay, Bismillah. If you are, just come back on screen. So, because I think what some of the points he made was really powerful, but okay, so we're gonna end this, Bismillah, and we're gonna give everyone's gonna give a final word, final input, final advice, final feeling, and again, with the intention that inshallah ta'ala,
I'm
that
almost
people are able
done
to
at
have
the
these
end.
conversations. Okay?
Well, you can come down anytime you want.
I'm sorry, could we?
Oh, sorry.
Somebody, Sister Nisa, please mute your mic. Okay. All right, Brother Ilyas, you're back. Bismillah. Okay, I'm going to start with you, brother. Can I get your final input? And I know you heard all the conversation, but like final piece of advice, input, perspective from you, brother. Brother Ilyas, you're on mute, brother. All you got to do is click that microphone button for me.
Hello?
There you go. Bismillah. Yep, I can hear you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all about open communication. All this stems from not having it. Just talk, state what you like, state what you perceive things are supposed to be. Try to plan for the future because that's what marriage is about. Planning for the future. Put it out there and see where it goes. If a person's not with it, got to move on. Don't lie to that woman. Don't try to say, oh, I never thought about it later on when you know you was thinking about another sister, because that's part of the recruitment plan with a lot of these brothers anyway. Oh, you can have more than one wife. Come on now. I'm from Philly. I've heard it before. So be honest, be truthful, put it on the table, and let it ride from there.
Bismillah. Thank you, brother Ilyas. And a good point about that communication, just so you know, as someone, I actually teach the skill of communication as a behavioral therapist. It is quite it is quite an extensive skill, and it does require regulation. And a lot of us are not regulated human beings to begin with. So that's why communication becomes hard. Okay, brother, Michael, final point. Very, very, very briefly, if you could.
All right. I don't know, I didn't make my statements as clear as I could, but I tried, and I want to go back to, like I said, my mother. For instance, we see the pain that women have been through, um, and polygamy, whether it's being practiced the right way or not, is it's still being practiced. And like the brother Nazir said, his leadership was in question. And so I think that a lot of brothers who start this idea of you know polygyny, I want to be in polygymy. Um, they didn't wake up They didn't wake up yesterday or the next or wake up tomorrow and be like, I have this epiphany. I'm polygynous. These are all thoughts that accumulate over time, and how you go about uh, being being trustworthy, being truthful with with your woman, with your wife, ultimately sets the stage for how you're going to have to risk manage. This is it's a heavy burden, but it's not a burden that one can't um, overcome.
Agreed.
But a lot of us just don't we don't pay that close attention. And the Quran states it clearly. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, showed through example the rule. What we look at is the opposite of that. Sometimes. It's
Yeah,
like
I agree.
you can't focus. You can't if you're not focusing on if you're not dropping all of the distractions, the 1,000+ distractions that you have daily, just to focus on Allah, then you can't
Sure.
necessarily you can't get there.
Thank you, Brother Mike. I really appreciate it. May Allah bless you for your perspective. I really appreciate that. Sister Saliha, final point. If we can keep it really brief so we can get Brother Nasir to bed or probably praying Fajr at this point. Go ahead, Sister Saliha, final point.
My final point is that going back to what you said about just fidelity, betrayal, and those kind of things. I just feel like the core of it really, like, again, I want to reiterate it again, boils down to communication, having these conversations, beyond just polygamy, you guys, monogamy. We have children, we have teenagers, we have, we're hoping our children will grow up to even be in relationships, right? Or, my daughter told me she wants to get married at 35. So I just want us to just keep certain things in mind, and don't forget, it's because we are Muslim, we are also, a lot of us are African American. We have things that we deal with in society, and I think that we could just be a little bit more human. And then I also want to say to men, I think it may be very difficult for men to see how painful it is for maybe them to take other wives, add on, let's just say the last point, to add on to families, is because they can't fathom the idea of their woman being with other men. And I think that sometimes if men can just take away the labels and all of that and just look at us as human beings, like, how would you feel? Like, one of the hadith, or the six pillars was, treat others how you would like to be treated. So if you feel that you would feel a way about that, just try to understand. And I think understanding goes a long way. You know what I'm saying? Relating to people's feelings and emotions goes a long way. And it gains people trust. And women want to feel safe, men want to feel safe. Men want to feel loved, women want to feel loved, kids want to feel loved. We all want to feel loved. And I'm really hoping that, outside of this raises, like you said, Sabria, some questions, some conversations to be had behind the scenes, and really collectively, bring this home so that we can really move forward from this. You know what I'm saying? And really get in tune with ourselves. And then, inshallah, I hope that Ramadan we can get on the right page. So I'm hoping and praying for that. So
I appreciate that perspective, Saliha. Very, very,
I
very
appreciate
powerful
that.
point
Thank
about that
you.
consideration and just sometimes how just the consideration goes a long way. Not that you
Yeah.
have to necessarily change your behavior or
Yeah.
change your decision, what you're going to do,
Yeah.
but it does affect how you may move. Absolutely.
100%.
Um, I appreciate that. Khadija, final word.
Integrity. Allah is watching us, and we might think that we mean something a certain way, sincerity. Um, Allah is watching, and we should always remember that.
Bismillah. I appreciate that beautiful advice. Alisa, quick final word for our audience and for all of our benefit.
Alhamdulillah. First of all, I just want to say thank you, Sabria, for creating this platform where we can have these difficult conversations and continue to tap into areas that need to be addressed in our ummah. Alhamdulillah. May Allah continue to preserve you and protect your platform and you at large. I mean, I just want to say about fidelity, it starts within ourselves, and we have to stay connected and true to ourselves and be true to who we are and connect back with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and stay grounded to what we're supposed to be doing. And with that fidelity, I think that just like men, they like, with trust, with respect, you can get a man to do almost anything and he'll be at your beck and mercy. The same thing with fidelity. When you earn a woman's fidelity and her trust and her honor, and she feels protected and safe, we're very amenable. We're very adaptable to every situation more than you can think, and we will prosper it. So I just think it boils down to communication, love, and self-introspection, knowing self and connecting back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Thank you, beautiful. We have a wider capacity than we're giving credit for, alhamdulillah. Bismillah, Coach Nazir, let's finalize this conversation. What's your final points and pieces of advice? Bismillah.
First, again, appreciate the conversation and having it.
Thank you.
As well. So, one, we're all adults, and there's a concept in Islam, al-wala wa bara, which is our loyalty and allegiance belongs to Allah. Now, love is expansive, and even just having this conversation to define that will be problematic in many different perspectives, right? So, fidelity clearly is to Allah Ta'ala and His Messenger, above all. And that was, I think, our goal this morning for me, this evening for you guys. Now, ladies, I'd assume and ask you to assume that your husband is biologically wired for polygyny. Have the conversation with him. Bring it up. Share your expectations and allow him to speak, but listen to him. Don't shame him. None of that stuff. If you expect him and want to have this open conversation and dialogue. So even when it's difficult, listen to him, hear it out. Women want to feel heard, and men want to feel respected. So just the simple ability to be approachable, have that matters. Now, men, assume your wife is possessive, which is normal, and she should be. You know what I'm saying? And she desires you to be her own, her security, her rock, right? This pivotal point in her life as this protection, right? Speak to her about your desires as you build your frame, because your frame matters. The weaker your frame is, the weaker you are as a man. You're not going to be exceptional. Be with the mediocre masses, which can be okay. You know what I'm saying? But for those who are exceptional and understand that love grows and you change, then, you want to increase your frame. So that's, again, if you intend to practice polygyny, because love, again, is expansive. I'll give you one example. Some people ask, well, would you marry again? So let me answer that real quick. And no, we don't live in the same house. We're right next to each other and all that for those who might not have joined at the beginning. But if I were to marry again, because I'm married to 2 wives, I could marry 2 more, right? Am I actively looking? No. Am I open? Yeah. But I was talking to my wives, and I'm like, if I marry again, being in Africa right now, I'm literally on a continent that my ancestors were taken from. That means I have relatives here on this continent that I don't know. They don't know me. These bonds are broken. But there are people here that my blood traces back to. Don't know who they are. If I did choose to marry again, it would be some woman likely from this continent or 2 to reignite that bond, to establish that connection again to this continent after hundreds of years of separation. Now, that's what I talked about with them, because that's a legacy, right? That comes from my perspective and having the ability to do it because I increased my frame. And the thing that I did when I initially got married at 19, that's not what I'm looking for in marriage. When I got married again when I was 35, that's not what I'm looking for again, because we grow and we change. But I just wanted to make that point because, again, love is expensive. And now having the ability to speak with my wives, be open and transparent about certain things, they know where my vision is. They were able to get on board with that because I allowed that. But I had to develop myself, and it was really painful to do that with the lack of resources. But as adults, it's our responsibility to not let this go past us to the next generation. So have the conversation about different forms of marriage, relationships, challenges, and everything else. Because I'm sure, well, I can't say I'm sure, but it's highly likely that you have relatives like I have relatives and uncles and aunts and people like that they don't care about polygyny. They might not be Muslim, but we know the lifestyle that's around and how that has devastated our societies. And if we are going to be better and we have the perfect deen, that doesn't mean we're perfect. That just means we have the perfect path. So let's operate as though we do and be better, inshallah ta'ala. And anything I said that was incorrect, of course, is from myself. May Allah ta'ala forgive me for that. But again, I appreciate you, exploring the conversation, despite any of the blowback that you may have. Just blame it on me. Hey, that brother,
No, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it. Subhanallah. Wala hawla wala quwwata illa billah. Okay, bismillah. So, alhamdulillah, I really appreciate you guys. I really do. This is really why I created the platform, to be honest with you. And, one of the things that makes it difficult is, people want me to I do have positions, and people know. That's why I do my lives. You hear them. But when I facilitate this is not about one perspective. This is really about pushing our community, and I have a specific interest in us, because there's no other demographic of people that have this specific experience as the Black person in the West or in America. And we often are like, oh yeah, we're just gonna do, we're just gonna do it because the Prophet did it, and sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which that is true. But cultural context matters in regards to how something is applied, right? What I'm gonna say is that what I want for our community more than anything else is a capacity to be dialectical in thought. And when I say that, I mean that you are able to, while I may hold a position that may completely disagree with Coach Nazir on some points, it may. I'm not saying it does, it may. I also have the capacity to think he's an honorable brother that's doing a great thing for the community. I can hold two of those perspectives at the same time. That's capacity. And I want our community, because that is something that if we didn't have our trauma, we wouldn't necessarily have to be black, white, right, wrong, us, them, right? We're more expansive than that as a people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us more expansive than that. Yeah. And so while these conversations are difficult, like I said, I will get slack because I'm going to say, Sabrina, you should have came harder, which I understand. I understand how you may feel about that. We're going to layer this, right? But it's not about that. It's really about pivoting the emotions. Because I hear some sisters in the chat, they said, I'm out. Bye. The last comment you said, Coach Nazir, they said they out. Okay? I understand. We're in this together, right? But really, I want you guys to take it, and I want you to be able to just hold frame, know what your own capacity and bandwidth is. You have a position, no problem, as long as you can align it with the Quran and Sunnah and with this deen. Mashallah, marhaban. You don't want to be in polygyny, nobody's got anything to say about it, right? You don't agree with me or Coach Nazir, no problem. But can we really move this needle so that we're not operating as a traumatized, hurt group of people that can't even have a baseline conversation or can't even stay in the fight with our own people, with our own family? SubhanAllah. May Allah make it easy. May Allah bless you guys. Thank you so much. First and foremost,
thank you for having us,
Coach Nazir. May Allah bless you. May Allah increase your family. May Allah benefit with your platform and put barakah and light. You did not have to come on at 2 a.m. I know it's much later now, but you did. And I appreciate you. And I also appreciate your capacity to hold frame and your position no matter what. A lot of brothers, they don't even fool with the old Muslim woman. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that you come on here, you have a conversation, and I just appreciate you, brother. I really do. Thank you to all of the commentators, all of my sisters. I love you guys, my brothers.
Love you too.
Family.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me.
You guys have an incredible night.
You too, sister.
Thank you so
much for having us.
All right, so podcast family. Until next time. Bismillah.